and the earth.
Oh, it's on now.
Hello there, people. Hello there, people of the interwebs and the earth. I am some guy that you probably don't know or care about, but I am now going to proceed to tell you that this is a very, very, very interesting show. We haven't even started the show yet, but I'm already going to tell you I'm going to make that promise right now. Okay, yes, this can prove that I have not hosted this podcast in about 7 months. So for those of you who don't know us, we were the Spider Nerd podcast about 7 months ago, I think. We went off the air in, I think it was early June.
Yeah, it was.
But we went off the air, and it was early June, and we're kind of back right now for a little bit of a reunion / pilot episode thing. It might be a pilot episode, it might be a reunion, we're not sure yet. But all we really know right now is that we are back to talk Spider-Man for some time, and we might do it in an interesting way depending on what mood we're in. Now, before I really introduce what topic we're going to talk about today, let's talk about some of the people who are on this panel. Let's introduce Mr. Thomas Patterson. Thomas, say hello to the listeners or the viewers or whatever they are right now.
Hello. Was that good?
All right, that was a great introduction. That was a great introduction. That was a great introduction.
I felt like that was good enough, wasn't it? No? No, all right.
Guys, Thomas, who's been off the podcast longer than anybody, even before we ended the show, only says, hey.
To be honest, I don't actually think Thomas was on. I think, besides me, I think James was actually on the most episodes. That's a great segue. Let's say hi to James right now.
I was pissed off when you ended it. I couldn't break Thomas's record as the number 2 guy. Anyways, hey guys, it's the AGR feed, so you already know who I am. It's me, James. Park after 90.
I never really count.
What?
What?
Yeah, I think he froze. Well, anyways, yeah, guys, it's me, James, Hardbacker 90 and everything, and I'm glad to be back with my amazing spider friends.
And then we got a weird-looking guy over there. Not sure who he is, but
I just joined the call. I don't know anyone. Nice to meet all of you.
Oh, hi. We're bringing guests in now. I see how it is.
Yeah. I'm the homeless guy they pulled off the street. I don't know anything about Spider-Man.
I see. All right. Well, that'll make it interesting to you then.
That's Jan.
I'm the guy who was in the least episode. I have the record for the least episodes, so yay.
Technically, if we're going by panelists, I actually have the record for least episodes because I've never been on a panel. I've always been the host. So technically, I'm on the least episodes for the panel. So there we go. I just completely destroyed everything. So basically, what we're going to do tonight is it's a pretty basic sort of setup for tonight. It's it's more of a pilot episode than anything else. But what we want to do is kind of give a retrospective of the Amazing Spider-Man film series and kind of, obviously with everything that's been coming out about Sony and their hacked emails and in the interview, which I still haven't seen, by the way, but I really need to do that. We are actually going to give a retrospective, a look back on the film series, and then give a little bit of an outlook towards the future and kind of see what maybe could happen there, what maybe couldn't happen there, who's going to get fired, and maybe who never had a job to begin with. So I guess more than anything, we should start with. I guess more than anything, we should start with just a basic.
Well, son.
Not
well, that went really well for those couple of minutes, I think.
John, can you repeat that? His camera's moving, but I can't hear him.
Oh, no, it just stopped. It froze again.
Captain Cole is obviously behind this.
Who?
It's a Flash. You watched the Flash?
No.
Okay, then you don't get the joke.
Well, until Jonathan unfreezes, I guess I'm hosting. I guess, or else we're gonna have dead air.
John 2.0.
So let's not talk about anything important. Did you guys want to talk about New Year's vows?
Up to since it ended, maybe?
Oh, I think John's back.
Z?
They can't hear him though.
Did I make it back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, where did you lose me?
You're
Right
talking
before you were about to say where we were going to start.
You're explaining things.
What was I explaining what was going to happen with the retrospective of the series?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, here's what's going down. We're going to give a retrospective of the show, or of the two films, and then we're going to give opinions on what the future of the film. Cool with that.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm good with it.
Awesome. So Thomas, you're technically our returning panelist. So let's give you the floor over for the first general overall thoughts on the film series. What are your impressions on the film series so far? And yeah, basically.
Maybe like biggest pro and biggest con to start off, and then we can delve into more discussion.
You just
general
like
thoughts.
Just general. Okay. So when it comes to the film series, I think the strongest points have obviously been the relationship between Peter and Gwen. We saw Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone's chemistry there. They work really well together. And so you see that kind of relationship, and that's definitely the strongest point for me. I think the weakest point of the film franchise so far is probably the villains. I felt like the Lizard was done pretty well, but at the same time I felt like they cut out a lot of his developmental scenes with his family that would have really helped the film kind of let us learn more about the guy who was behind the
Lizard plot.
Yep, and then for Electro, I think he's kind of I didn't really. The more I watched the Electro stuff, once he becomes Electro, I become a lot more okay with his character. But
I agree.
The Max Dillon kind of stuff, I felt like was a little much at times, and there were also scenes that explain that better that were also cut out that I feel like would have really helped. Yeah, like his mom and stuff. Yeah. Would have really helped his story go forward. Harry Osborn, I felt had a really great potential, but I felt like he was it almost felt like he had been shoehorned, even though the whole point of it was to get to Green Goblin. It felt like it was like, especially the way it was done with the transition from the Electro fight to the Green Goblin fight, it just felt like it was just like thrown in there. I felt like that could have been handled better, but I still think Green Goblin's probably one of the strongest villains that they got.
Yeah.
All right, so your overall thoughts on I'd say based on that you're fairly positive about the film series, but you do recognize that it has its faults. Is that an accurate summary?
Yeah, I think that it has its faults, and I'm not really sure about going forward with like Sinister Six, because most of the faults I find in the franchise are the villains. So unless we can come up with a better villains or a better understanding and fix those problems that the franchise has had so far, I'm not too optimistic about the Sinister Six film.
All right, James, let's get your thoughts on the film series so far overall. General thoughts.
My overall general thoughts are basically about the same. Is that the villains were just that. They were meh. Lizard, I thought was okay for a villain, but being come out the same year as another green Marvel hero with purple pants was in a big movie, he was obviously overshadowed. And he was really weird. Like, he played Connors almost like how he would be played post-Shed. Like a really creepy guy who you would want Peter to get away with before he even got the Lizard DNA. And like Spider-Man 2, it ran into the same problems as other superhero movies. Way too many villains. And when you have too many villains fighting for screen time, A, there's nothing left for our hero, and B, there's nothing left for each other. Because you're not just talking about, the villains such as, Rhino and Electro and Harry, you're talking about Oscorp, you're talking about Kafka, you're talking about, you
Oh
know,
God, Kafka.
bad guys in that movie. It was just, like, too much. And it's just like Electro was a Riddler ripoff. I think I even said that back, months ago. Like, I liked the movie,
What
but he was an Electro ripoff.
It was an Electro
And, I mean,
ripoff?
he was a Riddler ripoff. And then you got the Green Goblin, which is like, I just saw that movie like 5 years ago. Why did I need to re-see a really fast version of Harry Osborn storyline again? He just never really was the Green Goblin to me. It's weird to say. He had the glider, he had the pumpkin bombs, and he acted more like a Green Goblin than James Franco did. But it's like when I was still watching that, it's like, I don't really care because you didn't build him up to being the Green Goblin the way I want to. Have him in this movie, maybe Norman's the Goblin who kills her, and then in the third movie, you get Harry the next Green Goblin, or something like that. It's just like, it was rushed. And then you had Rhino, who was nothing. And my other things is my positives, like you said, Emma Stone. She was exactly the way I always wanted to see Gwen Stacy. The way she was in the comics back in the Ramita days, where, she was a blonde, beautiful bombshell, but she also wasn't the dumb damsel in distress who Spider-Man needed to save every Saturday, She could fight her own battles up until, her finally being killed in one, but still, she could fight her own battles. She could quip right with Spider-Man right back at him when he said something stupid. She was smarter. She was smart, if not smarter than Peter. And she was a very great, well-rounded character. And Andrew Garfield, it's hard to say because when he's in the mask, when he's Spider-Man, he's Spider-Man. I believe that that's the way Spider-Man was always meant to be seen on the big screen. But when he's Peter Parker, well, I do admit the way they updated him to 2012, 2014, all these, whatever years these movies came out, they updated him perfectly for them. For this time period, he still didn't scream Peter Parker to me. It's almost like I would take Tobey Maguire and then Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, if I could put them together, that would be like the ultimate Spider-Man for me on the big screen. And so that's my positives. Another positive thing I did like, was how they were throwing other mythos of the comic book into the movie, like the parents and stuff like that. It was like, because the Raimi movies really felt like it was sticking to 1960s 616. And with Venom, it's shown as soon as Raimi and the writers went to something that was anything post 1972, they were dead in the water. They did not know what to do, and it showed. And this movie franchise, you can see, okay, they can do something new with Venom. You can see them, they'll do something new with Kraven, or with Carnage, or with Hobgoblin, or something. Like, you can actually believe that this universe was expanding, and if you wanted to, even you could say it was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was that much of a ready-to-go kind of Spider-Man universe.
All right, so I'd say, for a summary, I'd say your thoughts are pretty much like Thomas's.
Yeah, there's more good that outweighs the bad, but the bad stuff you have to acknowledge. It's not something you can just write off as, that's like a nitpick, no big deal. Like, there's some big problems, with some of the stuff, but when they're good, they hit a home run, and when they strike out, they really strike out badly.
All right, Jan, general thoughts, 1 to 2 minutes, general thoughts on the film series?
Okay, I'd say that they're really frustrating because for everything, like James just said, when they get something right, it's like amazing. Like Spider-Man in costume in both movies was like perfect, and Gwen was perfect. And even though his arc was rushed, I felt like the way he acted and the way he was characterized before the disease set in, like the first scene where he meets Peter, and the fact that he was like this kid who he wouldn't have been like one of the cool kids if not for his money. I felt like that was they nailed Harry for that, like in that way. And
That's Harry Osborn. Yeah, that's very Harry.
Yeah, and but so they got, and Uncle Ben and Aunt May, were even better, I'd argue, than the original comic book versions. I'm not a fan of Aunt May from the original Lee Ditko era. I think she's like really annoying. I didn't really like Aunt May till JMS wrote her, but so I like a lot of that stuff. But then at the same time, the villains are kind of weak. I think the Lizard, he's not a terrible villain, but he was just kind of like forgettable. And fair enough, I guess that movie was more about Spider-Man than the villain, so I would have forgiven it if it was just that one. But the second one, Rhino was okay, but I think Paul Giamatti could have like toned down the hamminess a little bit. I think the fact that he's in a giant rhino suit is kind of enough. Like the fact that he's also like really like weird and stuff. I think it was a little bit too much. In Electro, I agree with Thomas. I didn't care for Max, but I really dug post transformation from Electro. But he didn't really have much motivation other than I want to kill Spider-Man. And he also felt like a plot device to get Harry into Oscorp and to give Spider-Man something to occupy him for the movie. And Harry was like, it felt like you could have just replaced him with Norman Osborn, and it would have pretty much been the same thing. I don't know why they made that Harry. It should have been Norman. You would have lost the friendship aspect, but I feel like it would have worked more if it was just Norman Osborn instead of Harry, and save Harry for like the third or the fourth or however many they were planning on making. So there's that, but at the same time, the action is great. So they have, I think, some of the best superhero action I've ever seen. And I think my biggest problem is I don't like the parent storyline, and I think it takes away from Uncle Ben and Aunt May's importance in some way. And I also feel like John and I discussed this at length. I feel like Peter's guilt over Uncle Ben's death was completely glossed over and is never brought up that he feels guilty for Uncle Ben. I think that's the biggest problem for me. Is that guilt is almost not there, at least in my opinion. So I'd say it's very mixed for me. There's much for everything I like. There's something I don't really like. But overall, I think there's something that I love to watch. So.
All right. Overall, for me, from my perspective on this film series, I really enjoy it. I'll be honest with you. I'd bet money on the table right now that I'm the most positive person about this series. Probably in the freaking world. I lit it. I really do. They're pros right off the bat, just general pros for me. The cast of both movies, fantastic. These guys know how to cast good actors, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, I'll get onto this when we break the films down individually, but I really, really dig Andrew Garfield. Andrew Garfield is amazing, just absolute perfection, both in the costume and out. I believe. My own personal opinion. Gwen Stacy, Emma Stone. Well, if you don't like Emma Stone, I feel sorry for you. I really do. You must not have had a puppy or something. You must have had like your candy stolen on the playground or something. I do feel sorry for you. I really do. Personally, I do agree to some extent with the villains, but I personally thought the Lizard was fantastic. I didn't mind Electro. I thought Harry is the one that's most problematic with me. His characterization is spot on, but I'll get onto the problems with his plot.
I think Harry's probably the
one big one.
Discussion all around. So
there's one big problem with Harry that I'll get onto. And the Rhino, to me, the Rhino was perfect. And really, the one big negative about this film series that I have is the parents' storyline, but we'll get onto that when we break the films down individually. So it'll be interesting to hear everyone's perspectives on this film series or on the films individually as we break them down. But we're going to move kind of more into depth a little bit about the first film. The first film was originally announced. I don't know the exact date. I really don't even know the
January
month.
2010.
But yeah, it was announced in January. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, thank you very much. You just saved my butt there. January 2010, canceled Spider-Man. I think they literally, if I'm correct, they canceled Spider-Man Fit on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong, but I believe that's how it went down.
It was weird. It was weird. I'm just going to say that right now. It was a really weird month.
And I'm just going to say that we're lucky that Spider-Man 4 was canceled because that was going to be a terrible movie.
Oh, yeah, that movie would not have been something I would want to see.
What happened was Tobey Maguire had said the previous week that Spider-Man 4 was moving forward and that they had everything ready to go and they were going to start shooting and it takes a while to make a movie. And then, like a few days later, they say that they canceled Spider-Man 4, Raimi's gone, Maguire's gone, Dunst is gone, they're rebooting the whole thing, and then they announced the director a few months later.
I think they should have, like, this is stupid to even talk about it now, like 5 years later or whatever, but I think maybe they should have waited to announce the reboot until they had a director and a cast. Like, I think maybe that would have been smarter. Like, hey, this person's directing it, so you can have some, like, faith in us instead of just saying, Spider-Man reboot, Spider-Man reboot.
They already had a script ready to go, though, was the thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
And that's really not how Hollywood works.
And also, I don't think we had an exact date, when Sony's contract with Marvel over the rights went up. Because for all you know, they needed to have the movie announced by a certain date.
Yeah.
So once Spider-Man 4 wasn't happening, they needed their plan B to be started right that minute, or else Marvel was going to get the rights back.
They said, according to the
Go ahead,
Sony
Thomas.
hacks, and I know we're going to get onto this later, but apparently it's like 4 years between the release of the last movie and start pre-production on the next one. They have to do that.
Oh, I was always under the impression that they had to release films within a certain time slot.
Yeah, apparently it's pre-production needs to take place at a minimum of 4 years away from
Which
the
makes
release
sense,
date of the
because
last one.
which makes sense because you're not going to film a movie and then like weeks before it comes out say, oh, the rights went back to Marvel, this movie's never coming out, you just wasted your time and money.
Yeah.
All right, but they announced the return, and not 6 months later, I don't believe, we not only had Mark Webb attached as the director, but I think we got the casting of Andrew Garfield fairly quickly.
Yeah, we got it in July.
Talk about both of those guys.
Yeah, I want to just get on to what was everyone's initial impression when we heard that Mark Webb was the one taking over this film franchise? I think I'm going to start first. My main impression of this was that it's probably going to be a train wreck because of the fact that this guy only did one film prior to this. And it was not by any stretch of the imagination a film of this degree, and it was, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's a film called 500 Days of Summer. Fantastic film, by the way. Absolutely love it. But it was definitely an unusual choice for the director, and I thought that it was a risky move, and I had no optimism for it whatsoever. I mean, James, what were your thoughts on Mark Webb when you first heard?
Before I get to that, I wanted to say, because like I said, it was a great film. Like, I remember being on Spider-Man websites like Crawl Space and Spider Fan and DVR and stuff like that, and you're hearing the news. Oh, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I love the movies. The movies are what got me into the comics. So I'm really pumped up for Spider-Man 4. You're hearing all the rumors from it's going to go really dark because it's in a dark place post Spider-Man 3 with Harry's death and Venom, and so it's going to have Morbius in it. Then you start to hear, it's going to be Kraven's Last Hunt, and then you start to hear, okay, Vulture and Black Cat. Later on, we found out the Vultress, but never mind. But you're getting really excited, like, okay, I'm getting really excited, new Spider-Man. And then you hear the rumors that, production is halted for some reason. And it was around the holidays, and I remember thinking, well, maybe they're just, they all want to go home for the holidays, and they're going to come back with fresh new ideas, or something like that. And then after the holidays, the news breaks, nope, they had great difficulties with Sam Raimi. Raimi's off the project. Oh, shit, Raimi's gone. Who's going to direct it? And then it's like, no, reboot. And it's like, what the hell do you mean reboot? I'm reading this news. Like, I think reboots like Batman and Robin, and then 8-9 years later doing Batman Begins. This is movie, and now 2 years later rebooting it. It felt like, give it some time to leave. Like, give it a second chance the first two. And then you get to hear the Mark Webb, and I remember thinking, who? Because the weird thing is, I saw 500 Days of Summer in the movie theater with a girlfriend at the time on a date, and I didn't know Mark Webb was directing because I didn't care. He wanted to go, and I was just wanting to go because of my girlfriend. And so I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And it's okay, he directed this movie. I got, yeah, this is a good movie. But not a Spider-Man movie. My mindset is, I just see that he was in the superhero genre. because his movie was anything close to that. So I'm thinking, oh god, what are they doing? They're gonna screw this up. And then I heard Andrew Garfield get cast. I was thinking, he's British. Like, not trying to sound bad or anything, but I'm thinking, why Christian Bale? And then you have, Hugh Jackman, who's Australian for Wolverine. It's like, can't we find any American actors to play these guys? But like, literally, that was my first impression, and I feel bad for saying that. Like, but he's British. I'm tired of this. Just get somebody, from here. We're gonna get like accents like in Spider-Man. I don't want that. Oh God, what are they doing? And then I wasn't like everybody else. Oh, he looked good-looking Spider-Man. It's like what? And that was first my initial impression was like, I don't know who this Mark Webb guy is. Saw that I actually saw him use it, and then I go, oh, that's a good movie, but I'm worried about what he would do to Spider-Man. And then Andrew Garfield, my first impression is, okay, this guy's a British guy, oh my god, we're going to get accents. And then it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait until I see more news about this movie if I'm going to like it or not. Because I'm not one of those people who normally, jump on something and hate it before I see it. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm liking what I'm hearing, but I'm not going to say worst movie ever until I actually start to see trailers or something like that.
All right, Thomas, what were your initial impressions on Mark Webb?
So I remember following this news. I remember following it from Spider-Man 4, and I was actually a little upset because the original Spider-Man trilogy, I grew up with that, and I was very attached to it personally. And you start hearing this news, and I was very upset about it. And then I hear that Mark Webb's directing it, and I hadn't seen 500 Days of Summer, but even I knew it was like an indie movie. It wasn't like big studio. It was kind of a smaller movie made by a guy who had directed music videos only before. This was his first movie and only movie up until this point. And I'm thinking, that's a really interesting choice. I don't know how they're going to do it. Is there going to be less Spider-Man action in it? Is it going to be kind of more like grounded and realistic with just like having like Spider-Man show up for like one scene and then that's it? And so I was a little worried about it, honestly. When I first heard about it, I was like, I don't know about this.
All right, Jan's initial thoughts on Mark Webb.
Webb, funny. Spider-Man. Get it? Webb. That was basically all I thought. I was like, that's
that was another thing I heard. Like, I remember there was a lot of jokes from people who said he only got the movie because his last name was Webb.
Well, to be fair, I was in sixth grade.
That factored into it.
I was in 6th grade when this came out, so I was like really little. So I was just like, they're rebooting Spider-Man, and it was ironic. I was like probably the only person in the entire fandom at that point, and I was in 6th grade, so I wasn't nearly as big a fan as I am now. But I was like, well, Spider-Man 3 was awful, so that's actually like I don't see the downside to this. Like, a fresh start. Hopefully, we can get like. And I remember when they announced the reboot, they said it will have Peter Parker developing his powers in high school, and I was like, well, that's awesome. I want, I always kind of didn't like how quickly the first Raimi movie got out of high school because I was a big fan of Spectacular Spider-Man. That was like my main kind of introduction on with the Raimi movies into Spider-Man. So I was like, oh, maybe we can have like a movie kind of that's more like Spectacular Spider-Man and have it be in high school. And I was actually like really excited when it was announced, and I thought Andrew Garfield. I was like, well, he looks quite a bit like Peter Parker. I mean, people are saying he's too handsome, but I think, everyone else outside of Ditko is drawing Peter Parker as a relatively handsome guy, so I didn't see a problem. I mean, he looks pretty much like Romita Peter Parker and Ramos Peter Parker and most of the artists. So I was pretty much on board from the get-go. I was probably one of the movie's biggest supporters on the internet. Yeah.
All right, and then we ended up getting we got some set pictures. Obviously, they shot the movie, all that stuff. They did all that. We got there was a lot of backlash towards the costume, which I guess we can touch on a little bit. We saw a costume that we're really not used to seeing. There were sunglass lenses in the eyes. There were the gloves were variations of the regular gloves with blue on the fingers instead of red. There were tennis shoe bottoms on the feet and the spot.
Hey, John, you cut out again.
He froze.
John froze again?
Damn it! Did I freeze again?
Yeah.
Oh, you're going now. You're good now.
Okay. Well, the spiders kind of looked like they were put in a medieval long stretchy thingy, and it was just really a very ugly costume from the pictures we saw of it. And I remember I saw this costume and I hated it. I thought it was absolute trash, and I did not like it one bit. And it just, even though I ended up being a big fan of the films, I was not optimistic about this when I was following it in production, and this is an example of when I was really negative about it because I thought this suit looked absolutely terrible, just utterly awful in every way. And so I'm very curious to know what you guys thought about the suit when it was first shown. Jan, we'll start with you. What were your initial impressions of the Spider-Man suit when we first saw it?
Well, the first one I saw was like a really blurry picture of him like jogging at night or something, like he was running. I remember thinking, that looks pretty. I remember I was so hyped when I saw he had the mechanical web shooters on his wrist. That got me excited because I was like, oh, like we're gonna get a movie that focuses more on Peter Parker as kind of a semi-scientist. And, Raimi's movies, they always, it was kind of like a show, don't tell kind of thing, where we were always told that Peter Parker was really smart, but it was never played any role in the story, where oftentimes in the comics, Peter's intelligence is what saved his ass a lot of times when he was fighting, really powerful bad guys. So I was excited to see, kind of the smarter,
In the Sandman.
What?
I said, oh no, you said how he would use his brain. Sometimes I'm just thinking of issue 4. He's like, what can I do to kill the Sandman? I don't know, vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, that was really cheap. Anyway, so I was excited when I saw the suit. I didn't get the fuss about it. I thought it looked fine. It wasn't that big of a departure for me, aside from the eyes. It looks kind of more homemade, which works since he's a poor teenager. And I never bought that a poor teenager could make the Raimi suit. That was always something that I thought was really funny. I saw a podcast that made the joke that the Raimi suit must have cost about $100 to make, since that's about how much money he has when he made it. Since he got the $100 instead of the $2,000 or whatever in the wrestling thing, so I thought the suit was pretty cool, and I remember there was a photo of Andrew Garfield standing in the costume. His mask was off, and he had cuts and bruises all over him. And I was like, oh, he's gonna get really roughed up. That's cool too. Spider-Man all the time in the comics gets his ass kicked more than almost any other superhero. So I was excited to see. So I was like, I everything that was coming out was I was fine with. I thought the suit was fine, and I still think it's fine, even though I think the second one had a better costume, like everybody.
All right, Thomas, initial thoughts on the costume?
See, as soon as I heard about the news of it getting rebooted, I didn't actually follow it as much because I was kind of upset about it, and so I kind of fell off that bandwagon. But I actually got I remember getting a new smartphone for Christmas, and I was just looking for wallpapers because I was so excited about it. And I looked up Spider-Man, and there was the new picture of Andrew Garfield standing what Jan talked about, with his backpack slung over his shoulder.
Yeah,
He's looking down without his mask, and he has a whole bunch of cuts and bruises across his face. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm gonna give this a shot. This looks super cool. I thought the suit looked really good. I hadn't seen the mask yet, but my first impression of the suit was I can actually really dig the suit. It has the mechanical web shooters that I read about in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. I'm super excited to see what they do with it. They're obviously bringing him back to high school, which is where I think he belongs. It was just I thought it looked awesome, and then I saw the mask, and I started becoming a little bit more skeptical because I didn't really like the eyes, but at the same time, the eyes kind of grew on me over time as well. So I was actually really optimistic about the costume. That's what drew me back into the.
Well, I like that they were sunglass lenses, because I thought that was kind of interesting. That it was you saw how he would have made it. But
yeah, I thought it was interesting in the fact that they were trying to make it more homemade, but at the same time, it just I just wasn't a huge fan of it because I liked the eyes in the Raimi costume better.
John, you there?
Yeah, we can't. I can't hear him.
Neither can I.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'll just give my opinion then until we get him back, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the suit, I was on CBR, and I'm on there because one of the podcasts, I don't know if it was them or it was ASM Classic, somebody had like a new episode that week. So I went on their site to see the updates on when the new podcast is out, so that way I can download it. Because before I discovered, hey, I can just go through iTunes and download these things. Like I thought I had to go literally through the websites and download them. And so I'm like looking there and I'm listening to the new episode of, I can't even remember what the podcast was. I think it was Crawl Space now the more I think about it. I think I remember hearing JR going off about something. And I'm listening, and then all of a sudden I refresh the page, and then boom, here's new Spider-Man. I'm like, what the F's going on here? Like, okay, here's the photo of him, and okay, yeah, he kind of looks beaten up, and I'm like, oh, did he just get into a battle? And like, I didn't even know Lizard was the villain yet. I don't think nobody really knew, but yet all you see is these claw marks on him, so you think, okay, there's only one villain that can be. So that's got to be confirmation that Lizard is the villain. So you had that, and then you had the suit, and people were speculating about if the missing parts of the suit were just like stuff that got torn off by the Lizard or whoever tore him. And I remember looking at it and thought, yeah, this looks kind of shitty. Like it was made like out of dollar store materials, but like Jan said, he's a teenager. That's what he would have to use to become Spider-Man. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is like, his first costume he makes when he's in high school, and then when he's with Connors, and he can be with more materials. Maybe he makes a newer suit, because of working at Oscorp with him or something. Like maybe, he starts working. I think there was the rumors about Oscorp. So I'm like, maybe he'll work at Oscorp with Norman or Connors or whatever. And as the movie goes on, he'll make the new suit and the web shooters and stuff like that. And I thought that's what it was going to be. And then we get the shot of him crouched over, shooting the web out of the web shooters. And it's like,
yeah. I love that.
Here's a clean version of the suit, and it's not looking any better. It's like, so you're really going to do that, huh? Yellow eyes? Yep. Where's the other parts of his suit? Like, there's missing red areas and webbing, guys. This is incomplete. Go back. You got time to finish this. And I did not like the first movie suit.
All right. Am I back?
I still don't.
Yeah, you're back.
I think he's back. John, are you back? John?
Did you say darn?
John.
Oh.
Jon.
Your name, bro.
Yeah, I hate all of you. No, I don't.
I didn't say anything.
So pretty much, yeah, at first glance, I didn't like the suit, but I thought, it's battle damage. So that's probably why it looks all weird. And then you see the clean version, not battle damage with the mask, and it's like, oh. Like, literally, that was my impression. Oh. And it's like, I didn't like the first one of this suit. Let's just say I was very excited when I saw that they were going back to the kind of Raimi look for the second movie. Let's just say that.
All right. So as we move through the production process, we saw a few trailers. Just give quick general thoughts on the trailers. I'm not going to go through each individual trailer because that would just take forever, and because I have no idea how many there were, I don't even remember most of them.
There were a few. There were 3.
There were like 4. There was like one. There was one where it was like there was a 2-minute version, and then they added like a kind of like a scene. But
there was an ultimate 4-minute trailer that they released like a month before release, but at the same time it was mostly reused footage from the other 3, so I didn't really count it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I really just remember the first trailer, and once again, hated it. Just there's nothing else that I could say about it. It's just that I did not like that first trailer, and I thought it was absolute. Well, I did not think it was good. Let's just put it that way. But James, what were your thoughts on the trailers overall? Did they help your view of the movie? Did they deter from it? Basically, just give us general thoughts about the trailers and what effect it had on your impending view of the film?
Just give me a second here.
Okay, Thomas, you go instead.
Oh no, I can talk now. Or my dad's gonna turn off the light on me. Yeah, here's what I can say now. 'Cause I didn't want to be too much noise in the background noises. Okay, when I first saw the first trailer, I remember thinking, I am Batman. I want to be Batman. Because it really did scream, we're making this dark. Aunt May has a secret. Death. His parents are gone, like my parents are dead. His Uncle Ben is shot, like my dad is dead. It screamed like what? It screamed really like it was way more darker than that movie was. Like, let's admit it.
Yeah.
It was like everybody has a secret. Secrets have a price. And it's like he's hanging upside down on the subway, and it's all close-up zooms in, and then you see the shot, and then I'm watching this and just thinking they're trying to be Batman. Like, I know that's the biggest fear. Everybody says, oh my God, they want to be the Dark Knight, and they're really going for that. They want to be the Dark Knight. And then you get to the end where you see like the first person, perspective of him web shooting, and that part I went like, well, that's actually kind of cool. Seeing him, you are Spider-Man web swinging for the city, and then they have that shot where he's just free falling, and then you see him shoot the web out of the web shooter as a way of saying like, yeah, he's using the web shooters, and then he lands and you get like that shot of him with that. And I remember thinking, okay, that part's cool, but this is way too dark for a Spider-Man movie. I hope this is just the first trailer, and that it's not going to be this dark. So I don't want to see Batman web shooting. I mean, honestly. And then the later trailers, like I think I saw that trailer in the movie theater too, and in 3D it was pretty awesome to see Spider-Man, just come at you for the reflection of the glass. That was pretty cool. And I remember seeing, the second trailer, and it still was really, really dark, but you got to see a little bit more of Emma Stone, a little bit more of Andrew Garfield's personality. So you were starting to see that it wasn't all going to be, let's try to be dark and depressing like Batman. You could tell that they were still going to try to keep some elements of Peter Parker in it. And I remember being in the movie theater, and when you have that shot when the Oscorp tower is falling, and the antenna from the top of it, and it comes at the screen like a spear, you can hear the audience, because we were in 3D, seeing the 3D movie, you can hear them all go, and yeah, that trailer was pretty good, and the other trailer I honestly don't remember, the other two, like literally I can't for the life of me remember them. But I will tell you this, like each additional trailer did get me a little bit more pumped for the movie. Where the first trailer was like confirming all my fears, it felt like.
Like, all my greatest fears have come true. Yeah.
All right, Thomas, initial thoughts on the trailers?
Yeah, so I'll just go through really fast. Like, so when it came to the teaser trailer that was playing in front of Captain America, the first Avenger, when that movie came out, so it was a full year before the movie actually came out. I remember thinking to myself that I actually had a very different opinion of the trailer than you guys did. I thought that it like embodied the kind of tone that I was hoping for from like an Ultimate Spider-Man kind of like comic book, which is the comic book that I really liked. I had a hard time getting into the Amazing Spider-Man comic books, but I liked the Ultimate Spider-Man ones. And I didn't think it was super dark. I saw a lot of the complaints online that it was like trying to be Batman. I didn't really see that in the trailer. I saw the kind of somber like tone and like the kind of feeling of loneliness that Peter has, where he's by himself at the beginning, where he's like talking about how he doesn't have much to tell about himself and stuff like that. That's the kind of tone that I got out of it, and I was like, yep, that's Peter Parker right there, just kind of alone by himself. And the first person that really notices him is, well, in this case, Gwen. And so I think I thought that worked really well, and it actually got me really pumped for the movie, especially when I saw the end part where he's swinging through. I was like, yes. And then each subsequent trailer, it kind of like the tones were a little bit different as it kept going. It showed off more of the fun aspects of Spider-Man, like him making fun of the car thief and stuff like that. With the shot that we showed many times of him basically being like, "Oh no, knives, my only weakness," and you started to see that, man, they really are going for the Spider-Man type of personality, which was what I was hoping for too. But we didn't get to see much of Spider-Man's personality in the first trailer, which I felt was a result of a lot of the CGI not really coming through. But I really liked all the trailers, honestly. I thought they were all really great.
Yeah, I agree with you on
All right,
that. With the
all
whole,
right, Jen.
the small knives, that was that. When I saw that moment in that one trailer, I'm like, Peter Parker, that's Spider-Man right there.
All right, Jan. Initial thoughts on the trailers?
Okay, so mine's weird. I remember they had one of those like 20-minute Comic-Con trailers that it didn't leak or anything, but they showed it during the Comic-Con panel, and that was before they actually released the trailer to the public. So I read a description online that someone posted on Ain't It Cool or something, where they were describing it, and they made a big emphasis on the fact that there was a lot of scenes in that trailer with Spider-Man being really funny, and that was something that is like a fanboy. I was like, oh my god, awesome, Raimi Spider-Man, that was like one of my problems, is that Spider-Man wasn't really fun enough. The movies were fun, but Spider-Man himself wasn't really a fun superhero, and I was so excited that we're going to see the wisecracking, smart aleck Spider-Man, pulling pranks on all the villains and all that good stuff. And I remember, so I actually, and none of that was in the first trailer that came out. So even though that trailer was kind of underwhelming to me, I was still pumped for the movie because I heard of all the cool stuff that was in the Comic-Con trailer, and there was a description of what the lizard looked like. And apparently, originally he actually did have a snout when they showed the footage for that trailer, because there was like a leak photo where he had like more of like a snout, and then they decided that they were going to have the snout gone so they could make so they could get the emotion of Dr. Connors across better. But I was excited for it, and then the trailers just kept making me more excited. I remember there was the one where they showed the scene where he saves the little boy from the bridge, and I remember I loved that trailer, and I was like, okay, these guys get Spider-Man, and that was like confirmed my excitement for the film. So I was, there was nothing that really deterred me from the movie at all throughout the trailers. I enjoyed pretty much all of them, and I was pumped. It was like probably Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 are probably like my most anticipated movies of all time. Yeah.
All right, so let's just dive right into this film right now. Let's talk about the movie itself. The Amazing Spider-Man, directed by Mark Webb, produced by Avi Arad, Laura Ziskin, rest in peace, Laura Ziskin, and Matt Tolmach. And let's just talk about the movie itself. Let's give give our thoughts on it, our general positives or general negative aspects of the film, and just really sort of dig into it. We don't have to go too in depth because it's just kind of a general retrospective, but we can get some good conversations going. I'm gonna give something that I really liked to start off here. Andrew Garfield, absolutely fantastic in this film, and I thought he was a fantastic representation of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I felt that they updated the character very well, and I felt that Garfield's acting throughout the film was very, very strong. I really don't think there were ever any points where he really slipped. I mean, I'm sure, like, if I went back and watched the film, I'm sure I could probably find one if I actively looked for it. But really, there were none that really jumped out at me, and they were all every moment with him was fairly solid. Something I really, really liked here, and I know a lot of people had a bit of a problem with this, but I really liked how they kind of played up the angle of his kind of nervous, shy quality a bit. He's always stuttering, he's kind of mumbling a bit. And to me, some people said that was a bit overdone. I didn't mind that, to be honest. One, because I don't mind, some twists being thrown at me in different interpretations of the media. Would I want to see that in the comics? I mean, with all the character now that's been established, with 616 and everything, it's going to be hard to throw that in. But, I mean, I thought it worked well in this universe, and the main thing that sold it was Garfield really sold it really well, and that was a big positive for me. But I know that a lot of people don't like Andrew Garfield's performance. I disagree with them, but I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on Andrew Garfield. So whoever wants to take it, free for all, just jump in.
Okay.
I will.
James, go.
I remember watching the movie, and Andrew Garfield, the second scene in the movie after, the whole my parents are dead, Batman moment. I'm just joking, but, when you see him and he's just staring at the wall there alone or whatever it is at the glass, and he's going to put up the school photo and Flash throws that basketball at his head. I mean, that right there, I remember watching thinking, oh, that's very Spider-Man. That's very Spider-Man. That's very Peter Parker. That's so cool. And then you got the scene where he's like staring at Gwen, you know, with the camera and everything. I'm thinking, oh, they're really starting to get him. And then he goes skateboarding for the school where I'm like, screw you, this ain't Ultimate or something like that. Like I'm thinking, okay, that part's a little bit weird, but everything else is very Peter Parker. You know, he thinks the girl is asking him on a date, but it turns out she just wants him to take nude photos of her for her boyfriend or something. I don't like that's what the scene felt like.
It was of her car or something.
It was of her boyfriend's car.
Yeah.
Oh, her boyfriend's car. It was something weird. Like I remember seeing the movie theater. I'm thinking, wow, this is getting really creepy. I remember seeing the movie, like I'm getting kind of creeped out by this scene.
That's really crap.
That I wasn't really paying attention. I was just thinking, okay, I was like already, you know, judging. You know, I was like, I mean, that's like a little bit of me that was mad at the first trailer. You know, trying to find anything to be mad about. But I remember thinking in that first scene, thinking, okay, his first scene's here in the high school, that he's getting beat up. He's really nervous and shy talking to Gwen. You know, he's got the basketball. He's clearly into some type of photography. Okay, they get him. This is Peter Parker. This is a 2012 Peter Parker. I'm going to roll with this. And then as the movie goes on, you get some more Peter Parker, you know, stuff in him. But as the movie went on by the end, I'm like, yeah, he played the role well. I just think Tobey did it better. But I remember saying, I'm not going to hold this against him because everything else he did, he knocked it out of the park. It's just, you know, some almost superficial things. Maybe say, yeah, Tobey did it better.
All right, Jan, jump in with your thoughts on Andrew Garfield.
Andrew Garfield's great. I think you can tell he was a big Spider-Man fan going in, and that's always nice to see an actor who really, you know, seeing an actor play a character they enjoy playing is always a plus in my opinion. I think he's. I agree with Thomas. I probably like Toby's Peter a little bit more, but honestly, I think he's a solid Peter Parker. I think I like his Spider-Man more than his Peter Parker. I think he's good at playing kind of the nerdy aspect. I like that he stuttered a little bit. That's something that guys do. He felt like a fairly realistic teenager. I don't buy that he got picked on though. I feel like, you know, even though, you know, we're updating it and everything, I still feel like he dressed a little bit too cool and was maybe, you know, was just like, I don't buy that he would get bullied in that way because we're talking about contemporization and maybe it's different for other kids, but like in my high school, like kids who, you know, are nerdy don't get picked on that much because being nerdy isn't really like an ostracized thing. You know, now it's like there's the jocks who all hang out together and then there's all the nerds who hang out together, but neither necessarily above the other. That's at least the way it is in my high school.
He was the cool, brooding, the cool, mysterious, brooding guy.
Yeah, like but I don't buy that he gets picked on by Flash Thompson. I thought that was kind of forced, but that's kind of a necessary component of the mythology, so I guess I'll give it a pass. I think they overplayed his jerkiness after he gets his powers a little bit, like when he argues with Uncle Ben. I feel like, I don't know, that's from Ultimate Spider-Man, and I always felt like sometimes Ultimate Spider-Man's Peter was a little bit too mopey for my taste. I think, so I think, you know, maybe some of the writing is a little bit wonky there, and there's some writing things that I'll probably get into, but purely performance-wise, I think he did a solid job as both sides, even if I prefer Tobey as Peter, but I think Andrew's a better Spider-Man, so, you know, he was good, and I give him a thumbs up, and I would have been happy to see him continue playing it in more movies, but it looks like he's probably out for good. So.
All right, Thomas, thoughts on Andrew Garfield?
I'm actually gonna really put a level of positive note on Andrew Garfield's performance. I think he totally sold the Peter Parker thing. I hear a lot of times that people can't buy into the fact that he was picked on by Flash Thompson because he's too good looking or whatever. I don't think that that's really contemporization. I don't think that in school people do not get picked on because they look good, particularly now. I think it's mostly based on the personality that they have. And everything that we find out about Peter throughout the first 30 minutes of the movie is that he is shy, which is a pretty good reason to get picked on by kids. A lot of kids pick on shy kids. And he's by himself. He doesn't have any friends, so that's another reason why a lot of people would pick on that kid. There's just so many things about Peter that just like make him a target, I find, for people like Flash who are confident and they're athletic, and versus a kid who really isn't that. I think the skateboard thing kind of did throw the non-athletic thing out the window, but at the same time, I didn't really care too much about that because I felt like he perfectly epitomized that, and I felt like the writing did a really good job to show that Peter was kind of ostracized from everybody. His Spider-Man, totally pitch perfect with his with making jokes and doing that kind of stuff. I don't think they overplayed his jerkiness. I felt like Peter was being completely warranted with how not warranted per se, because he's never warranted in that situation, but at the same time, you could understand where he's coming from. He was trying to do something that felt like it mattered in place of picking up Aunt May that night he got in the fight with Uncle Ben, so he's trying to defend himself without bringing that up. And then Uncle Ben throws his dad's words in his face, so it feels like a natural argument to have, and I didn't feel like that was too much of a jerk move to do.
No, you know what? I don't know. I might take that back. I think the point of that is that he is a jerk when he gets it. So yeah, you're right. I take that back.
Yeah, I think in particularly his emotional state at that point, it was kind of something that made sense to me, as that's kind of what he would do in that situation.
I still don't really buy that he was getting like physically bullied, but I think what you said is a good point. So yeah.
And then you have Peter as he gets up. I felt like we didn't really see too much of how he evolved as Peter after he got his powers and started using them as Spider-Man. I felt like that was a failure for the movie itself, is because we never really get to see how he evolves as Peter throughout the rest of the time, because the next scene that we see of him really being Peter with a large group of people is in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with the graduation scene where he's confident enough to kiss Gwen in front of everybody. And so I feel like that was a pretty big gap between the two characters. And I feel like it probably could have helped the story altogether if we'd seen more scenes of Peter kind of becoming more confident in the school environment. But overall, I felt like that is no fault of Andrew Garfield, and Andrew Garfield did a great job in both roles.
Yeah, Andrew was great. So.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, it could have been like them, contemporary trying to update the retcon that Flash Thompson had in the '80s about why he bullied Peter. I never read this issue, but I remember other people talking about it. That one of the retcons Marvel did about why Flash bullied Peter, and then during their media years they became friends, was that when he became Spider-Man, people thought Peter was a smartass, because whenever they would go to talk to him or people want to do something with him, he would have to run off to be Spider-Man, and they took it as he just thinks he's better than us, and he's so smart, and he's getting a college scholarship and all this stuff. But that retcon never really worked, because it never really explained why they bullied him before he was Spider-Man. But it was kind of that's why they hated him when he was Spider-Man. So I can kind of see with him being shy and brooding, and I miss my parents. My parents are dead. That he wasn't really much in that beginning. I can see how maybe they would maybe try to be his friend, to be nice to him, and then after all they're like, screw this, who gives a crap about this guy? Because he would, be like all in his desk, like, whatever, I don't want to talk to Peter Parker.
All right. Someone else throw out something that you liked in the movie. Thomas, let's hear another positive from you. What is something that you liked about the film?
Emma Stone, and Emma Stone. There are three different aspects of that. Her relationship with Andrew, the kind of on-screen chemistry that you get from them, just her charisma that she brings to the character in general. It makes her even bigger than the sort of at times Gwen Stacy in the comics, she could be a little two-dimensional, where she didn't have much going with her. Whereas in the movie, I felt like she added dimensions to her character.
Especially right before she died, where she was like a bipolar psycho. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. And so.
And then all the retcons years later from the writers that had pretty much all the writers had crushes on her growing up when they were kids reading it. Who made her? Peter would have a flashback, and she was this perfect little angel, like a Disney princess, with all these singing animals.
Yeah, exactly.
And then like you read the issues and
this
people
movie tried to portray that like it's very much kept in Peter's like point of view. So obviously we can be forgiven over the fact that she seems like the perfect girl to him. But there are times where you see kind of like that she gets emotional about like him going into danger because of her father and stuff like that. And you see a lot of these other things, these other layers of this character that we don't really get to see too much in the comics come out in the movie, and I felt like Emma Stone delivered that perfectly herself as the character. And then you see Andrew and Emma, who have such a fantastic chemistry on screen. You could really buy into it. I don't think I've seen a single superhero film where there's that great of a chemistry between the two leads. I mean, I would be welcome for you guys to try to throw some out there, but I can't think of any.
maybe Iron Man and Pepper Potts, but that's probably okay. Like I don't think it's
I
good.
have huge problems with that relationship, actually.
Batman and Robin.
Oh God.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna throw one out there. Spider-Man and Kirsten Dunst. We all know that was great chemistry, right? We all know that was fantastic.
You know what else was great? Tobey Maguire thrusting his pelvis into the camera.
I think he had better chemistry with the camera than he had with Kirsten Dunst. Honestly.
He had better chemistry with Jonah than he did with Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Isn't that meme of the whole of that whole meme, of J. Jonah Jameson laughing at Peter and people at their own followers of him saying something? That has more chemistry than Mary Jane.
Yeah. Yep.
Jonah Jameson and Betty Brant had better chemistry than that. Miss Brant, that's not the position I hired you for.
Peter Parker and Betty Brant had better chemistry than Mary Jane.
Absolutely. I totally like. I mean, Tobey Maguire and Elizabeth Banks. They've been in many movies together, and you can tell that they have much better chemistry than Kirsten and him ever had.
It's almost to the point, and the actress kind of hinted at it, like I think in Spider-Man 2, on the DVD special features, that she was even hinting at, me and him are having a little bit more better chemistry. Why isn't it him and Betty together? Kind of, she was hinting at it. She's like, I don't think it's with Mary Jane, but I kind of guess why we couldn't have a thing. And I think what she was hinting at is, we have better chemistry than him and Kirsten. Why are we forcing this?
Yeah, it felt very forced. I mean, it's a shame because the writing I felt like in the movies is decent enough. It's just it didn't have the actors to pull it off. That like this love story is meant to be and they're meant to be together. I never got that impression from their.
I think the writing sucked too. All they did was like say those god awful lines together to make me want to like.
Well, again, talk about that documentary that's on the Spider-Man 2 about the loves of Spider-Man. Quesada talks about Gwen not being in the movie. Well, at the time, because she's later on in 3. But at the time, Gwen not being in the movie, he's like, well, the way I understood it when I talked to Raimi and about not having Gwen in it, they explained to me that their Mary Jane was going to be like a combination of the best qualities of Gwen and the best qualities of Mary Jane into one character.
More like the worst of
I think they failed when they did that because when you watch Mary Jane's movie, she has the the abusive father and the bad home life and the red hair, and that's it. Oh, and calling Peter Tiger every once in a while.
And then that she's the most.
The rest of it is like this generic superhero girlfriend movie, blockbuster romance.
You guys know who Toby had great chemistry with? Bonesaw.
Did your husband make it for you?
Oh, yeah, Bonesaw is ready. He's going to take you to the limit. Funky like a monkey. Shooting to
And
the
then there's
moon.
like those really frightening, like muscular females next to him.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a huge Rain Savage fan.
Scary. That scared me as a kid. I was like, what the hell?
Sorry, I'm a huge
Really
Rain Savage fan.
I love how Spider-Man like defeats Bonesaw by kicking him while he's laying down. Like, wow, that,
Like 3 times.
Yeah.
I just love it. Randy Savage is probably like, I'm tired of getting beaten on every week by Hulk Hogan in the wrestling ring. Okay, I'm getting a movie role. What's my job? A teenager with fighter powers is going to beat you up in a cage and make you a ditch. Okay, I'll do it. Rest in peace, Randy Savage.
Yeah, we love you, Macho Man. I'll give my thoughts on Emma Stone. There's really no better way to describe her other than perfect. Emma Stone is an absolutely fantastic Gwen Stacy, and people say, "Oh, she's not like she was in the comic books." Well, in the comic books, she sucked. So let's get over it. Let's get over that right now, and let's accept the fact that Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is absolutely fantastic. Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is everything I want in a superhero love interest, and Emma Stone's Gwen Stacy is pretty much perfect. All right, let's just get over that right now.
Can I say something? Can I say something about her? I think it's interesting.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
That version of Gwen Stacy is kind of like I mean, aside from like being Gwen Stacy kind of in name and stature, he's actually more of a combination of 616 Mary Jane and Mary Jane.
Yes. I would say she's more like Ultimate MJ than she is any other character.
But she kind of has like 616 Mary Jane's like sense of humor, and the way she kind of banters with Peter is very similar to like maybe like later 616, like when they're married. It's kind of like a combination of those two characters, and I think
I
that
felt like the banter between Ultimate Peter and Ultimate MJ is very similar to what we saw in the movies as well. So
yeah, and like that scene where when she's like helping Peter like patch him up after his first fight with the wizard, that was very much like when she helped patch Peter up after he fought Doc Ock in the Ultimate arc.
Yeah. The similarities are definitely there, yeah.
And I just want to talk a little bit about when they cast Emma Stone, because it was like the weirdest thing ever. Because as everybody knows, in the Raimi trilogy, they cast a natural redhead to play Gwen and a natural blonde to play Mary Jane and dyed their hair. And I remember when Emma Stone was announced, and it was like Emma Stone to play Spider-Man in the reboot, and everybody's like, she looks like Mary Jane. You're right, she's got Mary Jane's personality. If you see her other movies, she looks like Mary Jane. She has the red hair. And then a year later, she's playing Gwen Stacy. What?
Yeah.
And
That had to have been a shocker. Yeah.
They did it again, and you know what? Everybody was wrong. Because she arguably was more Gwen Stacy, and sometimes Gwen Stacy in the comics, post her death, has been Gwen Stacy. Like I got the essentials, and when you read the Gwen, they took the best qualities of her in 616, added a little bit of her ultimate version in there. I think it's all kind of talking back to Peter kind of thing. And, of course, obviously knowing the secret, it wasn't all, I hate you because you killed my father, Spider-Man, so Peter can't, which I never got why he couldn't tell her, because he should know that Peter would never hurt her dad or hurt her. But just saying, hey, I'm Spider-Man, should make her realize Spider-Man is her dad. But I'm going off topic with that. But anyways, I like how they did her. I like how they had her on the secret. I like how they had her being like smarter than Peter. I just like the way they did her, and damn it, she beats Kirsten Dunst for like a mile. Like, if this was the Bonesaw cage wrestling match, Mary Jane would be in. Kirsten Dunst would have been knocked out for the 10 count long ago. It wouldn't even be a match. I was going to say another point that I can't think of it right now. Oh, I'm going to talk about remember one of the rumors when we first heard that she was playing Gwen, how, you got to remember, this is right post Brand New Day, One More Day, and so many people are like, it's a conspiracy. Marvel doesn't want a movie that undermines the fact that Mary Jane and him are not supposed to be together, so they made them make her Gwen. They wanted her to be Mary Jane. And I'm thinking, okay, they just said the script was written months ago. I don't think, they wanted her to be Mary Jane and then Marvel made her Gwen because of One More Day. Marvel doesn't even have the final saying in that. Sony owns the movie rights, so what are you people talking about?
I think that they just wanted to be closer to, you hear all the time about how Gwen is Peter's first love, so they wanted to really reboot it and not make it the same thing that we've seen before.
Yeah, I think they probably wanted to differentiate it as much as they could from the previous guys.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't want to retell the same love story over again. Make it a new girlfriend.
James just said the the idea that Gwen and that Emma Stone and Kirsten Dunst were doing a cage boxing match just like Toby and Bonesaw did in that movie. All I can imagine now is them fighting each other because Kirsten has the red hair, which Emma Stone is known for, and Emma has the blonde hair, which Kirsten Dunst is more commonly known for. So I'm just imagining those two fighting over the fact that they want the other's hair. That one went over like a lead balloon. Okay. That was terrible.
Even better, Toby's getting. I mean, Andrew Garfield. They're like, he got the announcers in the boxing and the UFC and the wrestling match. The announcers are Toby and Andrew, and Andrew's really in the fight, cheering on Emma. And because Toby had no chemistry with Kirsten whatsoever, he's just like, yeah, punch, kick, punch, kick.
Yeah.
Everything feels not quite normal when you punch me. All right.
Which I find really funny is that there was another movie that I remember when either Spider-Man 3 or Spider-Man 2 when I was at the movie theater. There was another Kirsten Dunst movie coming out, and I forgot what it was. And they had a one-scene shot of her with the boyfriend in the movie where they're playing tennis, and she said, "If you beat me, I'll sleep with you." And because of that, he got distracted, and he lost. And she goes, "Oh, sad, I could have used the workout, haha." I remember watching that trailer before Spider-Man, whatever Spider-Man movie it was, and I remember thinking, God, that trailer with her with that one line had more chemistry than she did in that whole Spider-Man movie I just walked out of seeing.
Oh,
yeah.
Wimbledon?
So maybe we could talk about the lizard.
All right, let's...
Yeah.
The lizard. Let's talk about the lizard.
John's the biggest apologizer for the lizard, so go ahead.
Yeah, let's have John go first.
Why am I the apologizer for the lizard? I'm not apologizing for the lizard. I thought he was awesome.
You said he's great, and
he's an apologist. That's what it means. He's an apologist, not an apologizer.
That's what I meant. But, John, you literally started with saying you thought he was great, and then all three of us said, yeah, the lizard was okay.
I love the lizard.
Bro. You've been called out.
He turned me out more as Connor than he did as the lizard. I'm just going to say that right now.
Anyway, John, go ahead.
I liked the lizard. I'm sorry, but I thought the design was fine. I didn't mind that he wasn't in a lab coat for 90% of the movie. If people think that he needs to be in a lab coat, you know what? That's cool, man. But I don't need the lab coat. I don't need that. I thought he looked fine the way he did. I thought Rhys Ifans. I apologize if I'm butchering that name.
Rhys Ifans.
No, it's even.
Rhys Ifans.
It's Evans.
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 Is
How
it?
do you pronounce that? I don't.
IMDb said you pronounced it that way. So.
Oh.
Well, I don't believe it.
IMDb
I don't believe it.
lies about a lot of things.
Shut up.
IMDb, you do not trust IMDb.
Don't judge me.
But Rhys Ifans, I thought he was fine. Was he creepy at times? Yes, but it never got to the point where I was just like, oh, for the love of gosh, I hate my life right now. It never really got to that point for me, and honestly, I thought I enjoyed the scenes with Connors and Peter, as creepy as some of them were. I thought that the moments that weren't creepy, actually, they showed some good banter between the two. And, I love that initial scene where Peter says, cross-species genetics, and he gives that whole zebrafish analogy and all that. I love that scene. And really, I thought Connors was just, I thought he was fine. I didn't really see any problems with him.
I think that's the biggest problem that I have, is that he is fine, and then that's pretty much it. That's the kind of thing that I get from him. I mean, the design is fine. I don't need him wearing a lab coat all the time either. I just think that at the same time, Dr. Connors didn't really have that much development outside of the interactions that he had with Peter, or the interaction that he had with Aratha about about not doing it. And you really did feel for him in that scene when he said, "You're never going to get your arm back." And that was the biggest thing, is that was the most emotional connection that you ever got with the guy. He's trying to do the right thing, and he's going to get everything taken away from him. And then all other motivation is kind of like thrown out the window. I didn't feel as much of a connection to him as I should, and Dr. Connors is one of the most sympathetic Spider-Man villains. I felt like it was kind of a wasted opportunity, considering that they didn't have his wife and kid in there. which they had cast and they had shot scenes with them. I felt like if you had added those scenes in, it would have helped make the story a lot more tragic and would have helped my enjoyment of the movie a lot better.
Yeah, because Martha and Billy are a big part of the Lizard mythos that they missed out on. 2 times, because if you count the Raimi trilogy, completely missing the boat on Lizard, with Martha and Billy not being in both trilogies.
But to be fair, though, the first trilogy, I feel like they maybe would have done them if he actually became the Lizard. He just was like such a minor character, and those movies already had like 15,000 characters. So
it really screamed up Raimi as a huge fan of the Ditko Ramita era, and so when he knew he had to write the high school professor, he's like, "Oh, it has to be Connors because Connors is a big part of the Marvel mythos when I grew up." But I'm not really interested in the Lizard, so I'll save him maybe when I run out of villains for the series.
The funny thing is, I heard that he was a front runner to be the main villain in Spider-Man 4, but then Sony was like, no, we need a villain with a face, so they shot him down on making Lizard the villain, and then Sony lets Mark Webb do it in the reboot.
Well, apparently...
That's why I don't believe it.
Apparently...
Why would they tell Raimi no for that for Spider-Man 4, only to use it in the reboot? Like that didn't.
No, it was one of those things that I heard when they were like rebooting it, is that he wanted to use the Lizard, and they told him no because they wanted a villain with a face.
Well, I know for a fact that originally, in the original draft for Spider-Man 2, it was actually going to be Doc Ock, the Lizard, and Black Cat, all as 3 villains. And then it was that the Spider-Man 2 script was written by a whole bunch of different people, and one of the writers who I think ended up writing the final draft said that they should only have 2 costume characters, Spider-Man and Doc Ock, and they cut the Lizard and Black Cat out. And then they basically just recycled Black Cat's plotline into the Spider-Man 2 tie-in game. So he actually was going to be in Spider-Man 2 originally, and also I think it's for the best because Doc Ock in that movie is a lot like the Lizard. So,
yeah, I felt like that he is by far the best villain that we've seen from a Spider-Man movie is Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. So,
yeah,
it's a good thing that we didn't have 3 because I felt like it would have taken away from Alfred Molina in particular, his great performance in that.
Brilliant.
I don't know, guys. In Spider-Man 2, I thought Doc Ock was brilliant but lazy.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
I'm good. I was hoping when I first said it, I'm like, God, nobody's gonna get this. But I remember there's a Spider-Man podcast, so you guys did get it. Come on.
We're at home on Saturday talking with people about Spider-Man. We will know.
Yeah, we're home on a Saturday night talking about Spider-Man movies. We're gonna get the reference.
Yeah, we got it.
All right.
There's no need to make us feel bad about getting the reference.
I have a reason to be home. Unlike you losers, I got a reason.
Got a reason. I did all my stuff earlier today, so I could be here.
I have no reason.
All right.
I left the house in the morning, and I haven't left the house since. So. Anyway, I guess I'll go about the Lizard. I think the casting was really good. I like Rhys Evans or Ifans or however the poor, that's a strange name. So if in like the 1 in a million chance Rhys Evans or however is watching this, which he is not, I'm sorry, but I thought he was a brilliant casting choice. And I remember when he was first cast, they just said Rhys Evans cast as Spider-Man reboot villain, and then they had a thing where he said that the great thing about the Spider-Man villains is that they have a personal connection to the hero. And I'm like, oh, he's playing the Lizard, and I was right.
They have a personal connection to the hero. He's playing Craven.
That'd be really fun. He's playing a guy who's Peter Parker.
He's playing a guy that has absolutely no personal connection to Peter Parker whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he was a great
him on his mantle.
He was a great casting choice, but I think that the writing, he was written really well up until he took the serum. I feel like he was pretty sympathetic and he had interesting motivations, and I liked that. He was a lot like Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin from the first movie in kind of motivation. But I like that where Norman Osborn in the first movie took the Goblin serum out of a completely personal, want to, save his, he was like, it was more personal, where Dr. Connors took the serum to spare others of being experimented on by Oscorp, which I thought made him really sympathetic. But the problem is his motivations, just all of a sudden he decides he wants to turn New York into lizards with absolutely no transition. It's like, he's just kind of a mindless beast when he goes after Rotha on the bridge, and all of a sudden he's like, oh man, we need everyone to be lizards. Like, I'm talking to myself in the sewer. What if I never do it again in the movie? I do it like once, and haha, evil bad guy and stuff. And then
I completely
what?
I don't agree with that because the whole point of what Connor's research was to make sure that everybody has equal opportunity and equal chances to be along the same lines. And when you see that he becomes the lizard, the thing is that as the lizard, what he does is he realizes that the only way to make everybody equal is to make everybody the same strength, make everybody the same
I feel like
kind
that
of baseline. And then that was the lizard. And then that's the kind of transition that I got.
They don't explore that idea at all. I thought they didn't explore that idea enough. Like they just kind of they say that, but I don't feel like there's enough time spent on his. I feel like maybe if he got some more scenes, there was actually a really good deleted scene where he and Peter have like a conversation post lizard transformation, and that made it work more. But that scene was cut. So in the movie, he just looks like a raving lunatic who has a motivation that kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere, at least to me. And I think the lizard coat, I didn't bother me that much, but it is kind of annoying because it's like, well, he wore the lizard coat for one scene and it looked fine, so I don't see why we didn't have him wear it. Like, I don't know. It's not going to bug me that much. It didn't bug me. That's a nitpick, but
because if you were a giant lizard running around New York City, would you keep your lab coat on?
Yeah, fair, I guess. I just
look at any superhero movie in the past 10 years. Other than Sandman from Spider-Man 3, how many times has the villain looked exactly like the comic book?
Okay, fair enough, but still, like, I don't know. In the second one, you have, like, Paul Giamatti as the Rhino, who was, I don't think anything. I don't know. I guess we'll get that later. But I think he's an all right villain. I don't know if he was the best choice for the first movie in your series. I feel like you should have started out with somebody like Electro or Kraven, who was more simple and just kind of a bad guy, and then save the really sympathetic, complicated character for the sequel. But since the first one, you already have to define Peter Parker.
Needed a personal connection to Peter. I think you could have done like Electro, just done like a thief that got electric powers and made him the villain, because you're focusing so much on Peter Parker that having scenes with a personal connection to a villain cut into that.
Yeah, exactly. That's my problem. And I think Raimi did it. Raimi was smart and kind of, even though comic book Green Goblin is really a complex character, movie Green Goblin was pretty much a 2D villain, and that worked perfectly for that movie because that movie was already focusing on the Spider-Man origin. So having a villain who's just there to mess stuff up and just be evil, it works. So I think maybe Electro, maybe he should have flopped it. Maybe Lizard should have been in the second one and Electro in the first. But honestly, I think the character was everything that was there was fine, but he should have maybe been developed more. And I think I might have liked Mindless Lizard a little bit more than Intelligent Lizard. But I don't know. It was I don't really dislike it. I don't like it. It's just kind of meh for me. Even though I think the guy did a good performance.
Well, what you said is, I think that's one of the problems with the reboot franchise, is how Raimi had it where, okay, Green Goblin's origin more or less was his comic origin. Doc Ock was more or less his comic origin. Sandman was more or less his comic origin. Venom, on and on and on. But with the web series, which is really weird to say the web series.
Yeah.
But that one was, everything had to be connected to Oscorp. Kafka's connected to Oscorp. Blizzard's connected to Oscorp. Goblin's connected to Oscorp. Smythe and the Spider Slayers are hinted at being connected to Oscorp. Black Cat's connected to Oscorp. Electro's connected to Oscorp. Everything's connected to Oscorp. And that's very unrealistic that everything bad in the city is Oscorp.
Well, see, now I would actually argue that it's more realistic because I think it makes more sense than having like a whole bunch I think that's the problem that every comic book has is there's no supervillains until the superhero shows up, and then all of a sudden, Max Dillon gets struck by lightning, and there's absolutely nothing special about the lightning that struck him, but somehow he gets the power to control electricity and decides to put on a starfish mask and run around and rob banks just after Spider-Man became Spider-Man, and I think it's really
Wouldn't you?
Well, okay, I'm not normal, but
that's beside the point.
Yeah. But
you also got to remember, Jan, other than before Captain America, there was no human getting superpowers in the Marvel Universe either, pretty much.
Well, see, but I feel like making all the villains come from Oscorp makes sense to me. It's a common link, and it feels less contrived. And all of a sudden, people are having crazy there's all this mad science going on just as the superhero shows up. I feel it just like it. I mean, I can see why people don't like it because it does make all the villain origins pretty much the same. But on the other hand, I think for telling a concise story, it works more. So I kind of disagree with James on that. I think the Oscorp thing is okay.
Well, and to talk about Captain America, the whole reason any of the heroes exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is because of Captain America in the first place. That's the only reason Hulk exists. It was to recreate the serum that made Captain America in the first place.
They all were.
And you saw Iron Man because there's already precedent for superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you see these people coming out in the modern age because of Captain America.
Well,
So it's kind of the precedent. But then at the same time, getting back to Oscorp, I feel like it actually makes more sense to me. However, I think that they kind of shot themselves in the foot if they wanted to make a Spider-Man universe out of it, because it makes it feel small. It makes it feel like everything is kind of like tied to Oscorp, and it doesn't make it feel like it could expand bigger than just New York City. Everything has to connect back to Oscorp in order for it to work. So I felt like this is the kind of story that should be used for Spider-Man's franchise in a Marvel Cinematic Universe, because that way the universe is already big. Now you see, and the Spider-Man universe is going to be super small because everything's connected to Oscorp. Whereas I felt like if you wanted to make a Spider-Man universe, you should have made it out of Raimi's movies where everything is, anything could happen, this could happen, that could happen. And whereas Oscorp being a common link, it limits the storytelling possibilities.
Can I say something that's really random? Go ahead, James. I'll go after you.
I know I'm jumping the gun here, but Thomas is saying I never agree with Thomas more in my life than this moment right now. He's exactly hit what I want to say. Like, you couldn't do, like, you could have obviously Harry connected to Oscorp and the Rhino because he's the one who gives him the suit. Okay, you can keep all that stuff. You can keep, like, guys like Doc Ock waiting in the wings and Sinister Six and Lizard, they want to cover him up. You can keep all that connected to Oscorp. I'm fine with that because it makes sense for the scientific community to be connected to each other. It makes sense for Oscorp and would employ Connors and Octavius. That's believable. I can believe that. You couldn't, though, have a guy get electric powers by being struck by lightning or something, or a power grid, or just something happens to him. He had to be bit by radioactive eels because they had to tie back to Oscorp. You couldn't just have him get his powers elsewhere, and then Harry hires him to help him out towards the end of the movie. It could have been the exact same thing. Only just make him a random guy who got the powers instead of being a Riddler.
I'm gonna go uber nerd in two ways right now, and I'm gonna sound like a total geek, but who cares? In Peter David's novel of Spider-Man 3, he actually retconned it that the company that was doing the sand experiment was the same company that the Green Goblin attacked and destroyed in Spider-Man 1, the Quest, that was like Oscorp's competitor. He said that like Quest was running the sand experiment, which I thought was really funny.
So that's not Oscorp.
The company that can't tell the difference the company that can't tell the mass difference between a human and a bird?
Yeah, that company.
Why don't you actually go out and check and make sure it's a bird before you mutate the crap out of something just because you were too lazy to get up and check?
and Sandman's like, no, it's okay for me to break the law. My daughter's sick.
Oh, okay, guys.
My daughter's sick. That makes it okay for me to break the law.
So fired. Yeah. You are so fired. Wait, what? You knew all along my dad killed himself and it wasn't Spider-Man, but you let me go on this? I took a bomb to the face.
But
how it should
anyway, and another, I read, James, you might have read this. You remember when they were doing the Gauntlet in Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man? There was a. Okay. But where'd James go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
Okay. The Gauntlet, and they had that whole they did like a mini that was sort of like a flashback to Electro's origin, and they retconned it that Magneto visited Max Dillon right before he attacked New York and told him that Max Dillon was actually a mutant and his mutation was like dormant, so he just happened to have like a dormant electric powers, and then he got struck by lightning. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing of all time. And I was just like, wow, they're overthinking this. Like, just don't mention Electro's origin. Don't like try to make it work because it can't. Because it's just goofy.
The problem with it is Electro's origin was in the Silver Age, where everything was a bolt of lightning. Flash, Bolt Lightning,
But Flash,
Electro.
Atomic bomb
Flash-
test.
The Flash, they made it work, like, because they had chemicals next to them. So it was like, well, you don't know what's in those chemicals, so you can, like, kind of BS it that would work. But Lightning, just there's no way that my brain can accept that. Like, it's really stupid, but I'm reading that issue, and I'm just like, no, well, okay, hold the soda. Like, what? Like, I mean, it's like... And honestly, the eels aren't much of an upgrade for me. I think Electro's origin just kind of sucks in general. So
I just think they should have done it some other way. Like, even if they went the whole, he's just a guy who just happened to get a suit that can spark electricity, or somehow. Like, he broke into Oscorp and took a suit that can spark electricity. It didn't have to be damn eels. I mean, literally, it's like, out of everything it's like they had to make it like he was hit by radioactive eels, because it has to be Oscorp and somehow to do with those animal experiments with Connors. That's what it screamed to me. It was like forced.
I felt like okay with the eels. I just felt like the point of which when he actually fell into the eel tank was a little contrived. I didn't feel like that we needed that. I felt like if he was like going someplace where he shouldn't have been going in the first place, and he ran into Connor's old experiments, and he got like attacked by the eels, I would have been perfectly fine with that. But it felt a little contrived when he fell into the tank. Like, it was just like a plot device.
Thomas, you mean to say that it's contrived, that the one guy in the whole city who hates Spider is insane about Spider-Man happens to get superpowers right as Harry Osborn comes back to New York, and right as Norman Osborn dies?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
It's like, I think we made this joke on the original, like, ASM2 podcast. Like when we were doing the episode with what's his name, Ed? Was that his name?
Yes, Ed Jones.
Ed
British
Jones.
guy.
We were like making all those jokes about, sir, our jetpack, is about to be made. No, Norman's like, no, it has to be vulture wings. Go back and work on it, Adrian Toombs. Okay, we're building this tank armor suit. Has to be a rhino.
It has to be a rhino. Why? Because just. Okay.
I'm gonna be honest right now. If they did not make something in the fashion of a zebra, I'm gonna be really disappointed.
Zebra man.
Prepare to be disappointed.
Like this high tech suit that makes you invisible. Chameleon.
Thanks for laughing at that. So we were talking about some film that came out, Amazing Spider-Man 1. Let's move on to the cons of that before this podcast goes about 4 hours long. Somebody throw out a con. I'll throw out a con right now. The parent stuff doesn't work.
Agree.
Just, it doesn't work. I don't like... The main thing I don't like about it, I don't like when people monkey with the origin, all right? I don't mind different twists on the character. I don't mind different... quote-unquote reinventions of the character, even though I really wouldn't call this a reinvention. I don't know why people are saying that. I really don't think it meets that definition. Maybe I just don't know what a reinvention is, but I really don't think it meets that. But I really did not like the monkeying with the origin right there. I did not like them weaving the parents into the origin. I didn't like them kind of taking away the random aspect of the origin, because, and it gets much worse in the next film. But I will say right now, was not a fan of the parents subplot. It didn't work for me. It didn't work.
So I take it you didn't care for all the stuff with the spider totem and the Morlun and JMS's run, because that was the same thing, but with magic. Magic.
Well, that was actually...
Okay, I'm going to throw in my con. I'm going to throw in my con. Lizard's motive. I'm going to say it right there, not to the character, because we already discussed the character, why we didn't, what we like, what we didn't like. But I'm going to say this right now. It was the motive of the Lizard to do all this. Because it felt like scene by scene, it felt like, okay, he's a mad scientist who mad with power, to the next scene, Jekyll and Hyde, kind of classic Lizard, Connors is in control and the Lizard's another being, to back to being, I'm a mad scientist who just wants to take over the world with these powers, ha 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 ha, to being like two different personalities. It felt like very confusing on who was controlling, who was in control, why is he doing this plot, why did he immediately go from, okay, I have these lizard powers to be, I want to make everybody a lizard. like it makes sense if you go with the whole comic book. He's being controlled by this other being that's like coming out with these lizard DNA, like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. Okay, that makes sense. But once you get to the point of it being Connors, and the only explanation they give is, so it's a world without disease or injuries. Well, I'm pretty sure lizards get disease too, or injured. Yeah, they grow their limbs back, but they still die. You're not. If that's your whole motivation,
I love that scene
go back.
I love that scene where Peter visits Connors. I love that scene where Peter visits Connors, and he's like, "What do you know about lizards, Dr. Connors?" And Connors is like, "Oh, lizards are only the most awesome thing God ever created." He's like,
"I'm totally not a bad guy."
I'm totally. God, Peter, don't worry about me. I'm not like the giant lizard you're looking for, but I think it's awesome, and I think everyone should be just like it.
I think spiders are icky. I think lizards are awesome, but I'm totally not the bad guy.
Lizards are amazing. Yeah.
I just love it. I just love the scene about how he figures it out that Peter's Spider-Man. It's like they're kind of okay. They do the whole kind of, why is Peter asking me all these questions about lizard and lizard DNA and stuff like that? And maybe if he can just use his brains. No, it's just he picks up the camera, property of Peter Parker.
Oh yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty big con. I think that the whole entire rebooted franchise, it relies too heavily on plot devices and ridiculous ones at that, like Harry using, like accidentally hitting the wound in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to like drop the thing on the desk that opens up all these files. I'm like, come on.
I will get to Harry Osborn. I have some big problems with Harry Osborn in the second one.
We should probably wait until The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to talk about Harry Osborn.
But I think one of my big cons is I feel like Uncle Ben's death doesn't carry the weight that it should. It almost feels like the filmmakers are just going down a checklist of, okay, Uncle Ben has to die, and you check it. And I feel like that guilt that Peter should have isn't there as much as it should be. He still learns the same lesson, but that lesson is more about how he kind of created the lizard, less Uncle Ben. And I feel like that was a big detriment to the franchise. I feel like, there's that deep-seated, the reason, his curse, like Tom Maguire said, it's my gift and my curse. That's really not there in this movie and not really in the second one. And I feel like that was, and I don't think it would have been that hard. You could have him tell Gwen about how he feels guilty about Uncle Ben or something. And when the movie first came out, I kind of forgave that because I thought maybe the sequel they would touch on Uncle Ben's death more, but they didn't. So I think since we have these two movies, I think that's the biggest flaw is Uncle Ben's death felt like checking off an event, on a checklist rather than anything that had like a huge importance on him.
Yeah, but at the same time, I felt like that was also the way the story was built, where Peter Parker doesn't really take Uncle Ben's words of that he needs to be responsible for his own actions and he needs to make sure that he's doing the right thing to heart, because what does he do right after that? He chases after his killer and only his killer, which is not something he would do if he was being truly responsible. He would fight any crime that came across, but no. So, I think at the same time you have to take into account the fact that Peter wasn't actually acting out of the fact that Uncle Ben had died. He was more focused on revenge rather than the fact that he needs to live up to what his uncle was saying. So
that stuff
I feel like the whole story, the whole way that it is built and structured in the entire narrative, doesn't work if you have him feeling guilty, extremely guilty over Uncle Ben's death.
But I would have liked an acknowledgement where he says, well, maybe I think what you could have done is if maybe he stops going after Uncle Ben's killer because he realizes that by going, Uncle Ben's killer is this sort of this scapegoat for him. He can say, well, it's not really my fault, it's this guy. So by going after him, he can kind of distract himself from the fact that it's his fault. But I don't feel like that's there. It's almost like I would have liked at least a mention of how he feels guilty about Uncle Ben or how he feels like that was his fault. And the video games even did that, where he mentions that he feels like it was his fault, but the movie just never touched on it. And I feel like that's a huge part of Spider-Man. So
I feel like we get more out of him being put on the right path by Captain Stacy than Uncle Ben himself.
I think the power and responsibility moment isn't the whole, oh my god, it's Uncle Ben, the guy who killed Uncle Ben, it's the same guy I let to get away. It's that scene after when he saves the little kid and he sees the little kid with the dad, again tying back to the parent subplot. And then when the guy asks us, who are you? And he pauses for a second and goes, I'm Spider-Man. Even though in my personal thing, if I was writing that movie, I would have him say, you're friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. but that's just a personal nitpick. Is when he just stands there and he thinks and he goes, "I'm Spider-Man," and he looks up. Like, to me, that's when he gets it, like power and responsibility. But it had to do with, it's connecting me back to my own father, who I never see anymore because he's gone. Not so much Uncle Ben's dead and it's my fault. It was, I get power and responsibility because I was able to give this kid what I didn't have with my dad.
No. See, but I feel like he should have talked about that with Gwen. Like maybe a scene where he says, "Well, before he died, Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility, and I never got that, and now I do, and his death is my fault, and it's my responsibility to help with it." Like I feel like there should have been a moment where he actually says that. It almost feels like they just kind of leave it up to the audience to discuss.
He does got the Parker guilt in the movie, like the part that they bring this up in the comics when he's with the Avengers. He goes, "Oh my God, it's my villain who's causing this big worldly, going to destroy the whole planet, thing, and it's one of my super villains. Oh my God, it's all my fault." And all the other heroes are like, "Why is everything your fault? This guy made the choice to be the way he is. It has nothing to do with you." And this movie kind of has that, where he's with Gwen in that one really sexy scene where he's topless and she's nursing his wounds. He's all like, "I should have stopped him. It's all my fault. I helped him become the Lizard." Like, they have those moments where he's guilty, Peter Parker, it's all my fault, but they don't put it in the right place, which is Uncle Ben's death.
Yeah, I think it's a problem. I think the over-reliance on the parents subplot is also responsible for that. Is the fact that they make his parents really important. And see, I'm not a huge person. I'm not the kind of person that would be against the parent subplot to begin with. I feel like it was cool to try to explore new things and try different things in a rebooted franchise to kind of differentiate it. And I felt like having the parents tied into the origin doesn't really harm too much for me. It probably harms it for a lot of other people, but for me, I was okay with it. But the biggest problem that I have with the parent subplot is not the fact that it's there, but the fact that it takes away from Uncle Ben's importance in the story and Aunt May's. And we had that scene in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 where Aunt May even acknowledges it and says, "I was the one who was your mother, and look where your parents are. Where did they go?" And then they weren't there for you.
And then Peter's like, "You're my mom," and then he goes to continue trying to find his parents.
Exactly, and I find that to be the biggest problem with the parent subplot. Not that they mess with the origin or anything, but mostly that.
And I mean, the parent stuff has been done well before. Ultimate did it fairly well, and the Michelini's run did it pretty well with the robot parents that were made by Chameleon and Harry Osborn. It's been explored well. But obviously, John doesn't think that was done well. But
don't bring that freaking robot story up.
616 didn't do it right. I mean, first it goes from, my parents were Russian spies. No, they were American spies. I killed the guy. Literally, we read that annual. Peter Parker totally killed the guy.
Yeah, that one where he kills the miniature.
I killed a guy. His parents never get a mention again for 20 years. They come back in the first Carnage issue. Who are these mysterious people who know Peter Parker who look just like adult women and male versions of him? Oh, who can they be? What can they be? Oh, they're his parents. No, they're not. They're robots. Bye.
Okay. You know what? Fair enough. But, I mean, the annual was all right, I guess. But I think you could do parents. Maybe the Ultimate example was better.
The Ultimate version where they do the Venom storyline with them is a perfect way to bring in Peter's parents. And I felt like that would have been the time to bring him in, is if you were doing Venom and just have it relate back to Eddie Brock Sr., which I feel like Kirk Connors was kind of like Eddie Brock Sr. in this movie. And I don't think it needed.
In the second one, it's Norman Osborn. So.
Exactly. I don't think we needed that in either of the films. I feel like they were perfectly fine without it. So.
Because literally, I could see them going the Ultimate route if they make more movies and they do the Venom one. I can so see them have Eddie Brock being an upcoming young scientist at Oscorp. He remembers how he too was growing up really good friends with Peter Parker. Calls in Peter because our dad's working on this Venom project here at Oscorp, and then boom, there you go with the Black Suit. I can see them doing that.
But they already basically did that, but they just substituted Harry Osborn for Eddie Brock.
And then Spider-Man stuff.
Harry Osborn is basically Eddie Brock, but
And Venom is instead the spiders. So I felt like you can't really do it. And unfortunately, it could have worked out, but they they didn't spend enough time on it to build it up, and it just didn't work out the same way that the Venom story arc did.
Maybe
All right.
Yeah,
We've been talking about this movie for a good 45 minutes. Let's kind of wrap this discussion up. I think let's go around just kind of. I think we'll just do a letter grade of each from each panelist about their thoughts on the film. So, Thomas, what grade would you give the movie overall?
I think I'd give it either a B plus or an A minus. I'm still kind of struggling with that. I'll just be generous today and I'll give it an A minus. I felt like the villain was the biggest weakness out of it. The parent storyline didn't bother me too much, but at the same time it took away from Uncle Ben's importance in the story. But everything else works perfectly. Peter is a great Peter Parker. Andrew is a great Peter Parker. Emma Stone is a great Gwen Stacy, and their relationship, which really drives the film, is just a highlight for all superhero films. So I give it an A minus.
All right, James, grade for Amazing Spider-Man 1?
My grade for it's what I said earlier. I would give it like a B plus, A minus, maybe somewhere in the middle between there. And here's my reasoning. Like I said, about the whole series, when it hits a home run in this movie, it's completely out of the city. It's gone from the baseball stadium. But when it strikes out, it's the person playing t-ball who can't hit the ball off the pole. It's that bad. And it's like the parent subplot. Like, there's two reasonings why it's so hitting over the head with it, I feel like. One, they wanted to be different than the Raimi trilogy, which focused on Uncle Ben, so they want to have another Gil, Peter Parker backstory. So what do? Well, the parents are the next closest thing, I guess, other than killing off Aunt May, or something like that. The parents, and it's okay. And the other reason is obvious. They wanted him to be Batman. What's the big thing about Batman? My parents are dead. So what do they have Spider-Man do in all these movies? My parents are either dead or missing. I have to solve the mystery. Like, that's it.
All right,
yeah,
Jan,
plus A minus somewhere there.
All right, James gives us a B plus A minus. Jan, give me your grade on ASM 1.
I don't know. It's probably an A minus or a B plus, like those two guys. I think it gets more right than it does wrong, but it still gets a fair amount wrong. I think it's all around a really entertaining movie. There's some script problems. The villain is just kind of, not like, he's not terrible, but he's not really memorable or interesting. And the parent storyline sucks. So I'd probably give it a B plus.
All right, my grade, I give it. All right, my grade, I give it. To be honest, I'm vacillating between two different letter grades than you guys. I'm vacillating between an A minus and a straight A. I do think that I think this movie gets a lot right, and I think the main thing that it does need to get right is the main character, who is Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and I thought that they really did get that character right for the most part, and it was just a really solid movie. I thought the cast was excellent, and really most of the cons, the parent storyline is terrible, but I didn't think to take down the A, so mine is somewhere around there. But this episode's going way longer than I thought it would, but that's not surprising. We can turn anything into a 2-hour discussion. Just listen to some of our previous shows.
We haven't talked for like 7 months, so I figure it's fair.
But Amazing Spider-Man 2
might go 7 months.
Amazing Spider-Man 2, really, it was a film that we didn't get a lot of information about really until 6 months until it really came out. The most we really got was set pictures. We got basically no footage until I don't even remember when that first trailer came out.
December 5th.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, according to Thomas, the first trailer came out on December 5th. I honestly didn't remember that. I knew it was December sometime. I didn't remember that part. Yeah, the first trailer came out, and I gotta admit, I was really damn excited for that movie when that first trailer came out, and then I got less and less excited for it as about the next 1.5 million trailers came out, because there was about two. I think they released that entire movie before we even got to the theater. So I thought that right off the bat that was a mistake.
They released all the
showed
action
way
sequences. There was nothing new in the action sequences. Every single action sequence I saw in the trailer already.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I think John just
There was not. What did you guys think of the first trailer in your initial impressions of the film after you saw it?
I don't even think you really need to say that, John, since we were like on the podcast, me and him, when our first reactions came out. But same thing there. You know, I was optimistic. I liked the first movie. All the rumors I was hearing, all the rumors I was hearing from Shannon Woodley being cast as Mary Jane, to Harry's gonna be brought in, the Oscorp is gonna be in there. Oh, they're gonna make Electro the villain. That's gonna be really cool. What they're gonna do there, because like the first trailer, pretty much was the first thing that hinted at the death is coming.
Yeah, but I don't. I think this is part of the brilliance of the first trailer as well, is that it didn't hit it like completely. It wasn't completely on the nose with Gwen Stacy's death. Like there was a shot of Green Goblin, which I think it was a complete mistake to reveal that Green Goblin was even in the movie until the release. I felt like they should have kept that part a secret until the movie was released, and then you would have seen Green Goblin, and you would have just been like, can you imagine just freaking out in your seat and being like, oh my god, Green Goblin's in the freaking movie.
I would have loved to have gone into that film not knowing that. I would have loved to have gone in there not knowing that.
See, the problem is, though, they released it early in Europe, so we would have known on the internet. Because it's impossible for me to get
I probably would have shut down my internet like completely.
See, you're better than I am. I could not do that.
And the other problem is
my internet out.
Sony with Spider-Man was competing with not one but two big superhero movies around the time. 3 if you count Guardians of the Galaxy, but that came out much later in a few more. They were competing against X-Men, and they were competing against Captain America. They needed something in that trailer to put your butts in the seats, and it didn't really work when we did the podcast. So we saw the very, very small, box office numbers starting to come in. But like you said, they needed something in the trailer to make you say, I gotta go see this. Bam, we got Gwen in a few shots in that green jacket and the pink mini skirt to make you think about the death. Bam, we got Green Goblin in that 1 second shot. Bam, here's Rhino with him swinging the manhole. Bam, here's Electro. Bam, here's Peter. Bam, here's all this stuff. Here's Aunt May saying the line about secrets again. See this movie. Please.
Vulture and Doc Ock arms was what got me. I was like, oh.
Oh, yeah, they added Doc Ock tentacles in the Vulture. So, again, it's like all this stuff that's making you gotta see this movie.
I felt like it still would have put butts in the seats, though, if they had cut out Green Goblin, because I think the biggest thing is that when we heard Electro saying all those really cool lines, which, especially in later trailers, he didn't even say in the movie, like, there was one line where he says, you wanted to be the hero, now you got to pay the price. Where was that?
Apparently,
that line was awesome.
Apparently, Mark Webb said that line was recorded just for the trailers. But that was never in the movie.
That ticks me off.
Yeah,
it's such a cool line. But anyway.
The thing about that trailer, like you said, I mean, like, one of the big things was after it came out, like, we did this on our podcast. Other podcasts about Spider-Man did this. Every other website and forum did this. Everybody took screenshots. They were freeze-framing YouTube, and they're saying, oh, there's the words Venom on this file. Okay, they're hinting at a Venom movie later on. Here's a file that says Morbius. Here's a shot of the arms. It's like they were putting so much in that first trailer that they gave the whole movie away, it felt like. In retrospective, in hindsight, they gave it all away there.
Well, I felt like the first trailer. If we had gotten the first trailer and maybe the final trailer that they released, I would have been okay. I mean, like they did show a lot, but at the same time, if they had just done the first trailer and the final trailer, I probably would have been like, there would have been a lot I was surprised about going into that movie.
You know what they shouldn't have shown either? They shouldn't have shown Rhino at all, because they made you think that Rhino was going to be a big part of the movie, and then he was like in 3 minutes, and I was fine with how it was used. But they shouldn't have shown any. They should not have shown a shot of Rhino, because they should have made it look like Electro was the sole villain.
But here's the thing.
Mark Webb did say, "Oh hey, Rhino's in this movie as well as Electro." He never said Green Goblin before, so he had already let the cat out of the bag on the Rhino thing. And then at the same time,
and also the actor Paul Giovanni, is that the name of the actor who played him?
Yeah,
he let the cat out of the bag too. Like, he was all out even before right before he signed on the dotted line. He was already talking about playing the Rhino, so you couldn't really keep the secret when the actor won't shut up about it.
Yeah, they really did kind of shoot themselves.
Knowing that he was in the movie, it was I just didn't want to see any of the footage, because that's like, it would have been so cool if you didn't see any of Rhino until the actual movie. Like Electro, they should have focused on Electro in the trailers, in my opinion.
But here's the thing, though, with that. Everyone knew that Rhino was going to be in the movie. They didn't solicit Harry Osborn as Harry Osborn / Green Goblin. Paul Giamatti was solicited as the Rhino because people.
Yeah, but I didn't want to see what he looked like. It would have been cool if I didn't see what he looked like. Because
I feel like if you announced that Rhino was going to be in the movie and you didn't show him at least even in one segment of the trailer, people would have been yelling "rip off" everywhere. I feel like
maybe a shot, but they shouldn't have showed that whole shot where he hits him with the manhole. That was stupid.
Oh, well, that was the ending shot of the movie, so that's part of the problem. But
that's his only scene in the movie, and they gave it away in the first trailer.
So I have a really interesting experience.
You really shouldn't show your final shot.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
You really shouldn't show your final shot in your trailer.
Unless the movie ends in a cliffhanger and there's just one line, and you want the line to also draw in people by him, like if it's a random superhero movie and it's a cliffhanger and the hero says, "I gotta stop him," and that's like the last line in the movie, because then you can use that soundbite and it can be anywhere in the movie. But no, this one they screwed up. They literally gave the last 10 seconds away in the first trailer.
Well, and can I say something? I waited like 8 hours. I was in San Diego Comic-Con the year that they were previewing it, so I actually waited 8 hours, and I was sat in a really uncomfortable seat in San Diego in the Hall H, and I saw the trailer. I was super excited for this movie, and in the Comic-Con, so I had already seen footage before anybody else, so I wasn't as excited for the first trailer because I already saw the Comic-Con footage. And it was funny, there was like no focus. Like Dane DeHaan was there, like he showed he was in the panel, but he said, like, one person asked him like a question, he just answered it. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's really exciting to be in a Spider-Man movie," and that was like all he said. And then all the focus was on Jamie Foxx as Electro, and they showed a little bit of that scene where Harry like tries to get Electro to work for him. So I was like, okay, so Harry's going to be kind of like a villain, but not like a super villain. Like, he'll be manipulating Electro, but he won't actually be like fighting Spider-Man directly. I thought, that's what they were. What I thought was that Norman was like Harry was like the liaison between everybody else and Norman. Like, he was doing what Norman was telling him to do, and then that's what I thought it was, and I was wrong.
Like in the comics, he so much wants his dad's approval and say, "I love you." He's willing to do anything Norman tells him to do.
Yeah, I thought it was
I feel like that's pretty clever misdirection, and they probably should have just kept that up until the release of the film. I feel like they should have really marketed Electro as the main villain and really done that, and then surprised everybody with the Green Goblin reveal and just really blown the socks off of everybody in the theater and been like, "Oh my gosh, Gwen is going to die," because now you look at because would the outfit itself be a clear giveaway that she's going to die? Probably not, not by itself. But if you had Green Goblin show up and you knew that she was wearing that outfit, you'd be like, "Well, crap, that's it." So.
Yeah.
But you would have people still excited because you're finally seeing the night Gwen Stacy died live on the big screen. I mean, that would have got people pumped up. If it was just a Green Goblin movie, seeing her on the bridge in that dress is going to be, "Oh my God, I got to go see that they're actually doing the death," or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was also pretty funny. Mark Webb was talking about how like powerful Electro was, and he said, yeah, it was like how do you beat a guy with electric powers? And then some guy in the back was like rubber, like really loud, and everyone started laughing.
But speaking of what you guys are saying, the thing about the trailer,
water.
the thing about the trailer, about the Green Goblin that I think they should have done, hide the face. Because everybody would have freeze framed and said, oh, that's Dan DeHaan, it's the Green Goblin. If they would have shown that shot of the Goblin going really fast in the glider or something, and it was... Sorry, my brother's in here, he's making a lot of noises. If they show this 1 second shot of the Green Goblin from behind going by with the glider or something and manipulated the voice enough where you don't know whose voice it is, then you would have had people hype. But by giving away that it's Harry, I think it lost some of the value. Because it's like, well, then what's Norman doing here? Like, why isn't you just cast Norman? Why aren't you going to use them? And they didn't. They had him in one scene and he was dead. And then you had the head in the tube, but that was completely a deleted scene. That now with the whole franchise of the series unknown, you might never get an ending to even that. It's like they completely dropped the ball with the Green Goblin, and it starts with that trailer when they just gave him away there. Oh, it's Dan DeHaan. Harry's the Goblin. He's gonna keep going. Go see our movie.
Well, we never heard his voice, so I don't think that was a giveaway.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could see it was him because they used the eye shot and everything.
What he was going to sound like.
Well, that's what I mean. Though. If they would use a behind shot of the glider, or just a shot of maybe like that shot of the close up of the eye on the person, and then the behind shot of the guy in the glider and everything, and then he flies off. You can speculate, oh my God, that they're setting up the Goblin. Like maybe the movie ends with a cliffhanger of him being like, Norman being like, oh, if you want to do it, you have to do it yourself. And the final shot is him flying off in the glider, or he comes in and kills her in the last act. And then when it's Harry, it's like it felt like they really dropped the ball. It's like they rushed to get to Harry and Peter. It felt like. Yeah.
So I think we were all pretty hyped about this movie, though, when it was coming out, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Just go back to the podcast. Like, go back to the old episodes. We're all, like, giddy schoolgirls, like, oh, my God, this is going to be the best Spider-Man movie ever.
I felt they also dropped the ball with the marketing of, like, adding lines into the trailers that didn't actually make it into the film. I felt
lines that were better than the ones in the movie.
But that happens with all movies. Like literally, you go to every trailer. There's alternative takes. There's deleted scenes.
Yeah, but at the same time, there's like whole segments of like dialogue cut out. Like Dane DeHaan in the first trailer asks Norman, "What about Peter?" And you never hear that. You never hear him ask Norman, "What about Peter?" You never hear.
And then, the scene that was in every one of the trailers, but the movie where it's like. Why is Oscorp
has been watching you?
Yeah. Oh, isn't that the question of the day, or whatever he says?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and apparently when Norman Osborn's like, "We have plans for you, Peter Parker."
Yep. Well, I'm glad that was in the jar. The head in the jar. That was going to be him when he says it, but.
No, that was another line that was added in the trailer. Mark Webb said so.
Oh, did he?
All right. So May 2nd, 2014 rolls around, and. The movie comes into the theater, and basically, I guess let's just talk about the movie itself right now. A lot of it's kind of retread because we did it on an earlier episode. What number, I couldn't tell you. I honestly don't remember. Right now...
it's been a while, so we can have a new perspective, so...
Yeah, a little bit, because that was kind of a first impression thing, but kind of a detailed thing. But, basically, let's just give our Let's throw out things we liked in the movie, things we didn't like, just basically what we did with the last movie, except this time let's hope that it goes a little bit shorter. My biggest positive of this movie has to be, I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again, this guy nails it. And really he nails it even more in this movie, I thought. Especially there's the scene towards the beginning of the film where it's kind of just a montage of him doing good deeds as Spider-Man, and he saves that kid from the bullies. That's a fantastic scene. I loved all of his quippage with Rhino. I loved all of his quippage with Electro. And I loved everything that he did in the suit. His relationship with Gwen I thought was very well done once again. And really, there wasn't really a problem I had with Andrew Garfield except for the parents plot, which I'll get. Yeah, we'll talk about that bullshit later. So let's throw out some positives here. What did we like about the film?
Action, action, action. Best Spider-Man action, I think, on screen. You know, so many awesome scenes.
I'd debate you.
And I
I'd
think
say I'd say Spider-Man 2 is still better.
The Spider-Man 2 train scene is better than the fight scenes that we saw in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. We haven't really seen something on par with that, but the best web swinging we've seen is definitely in this movie. The best kind of like villain interaction is in this movie, where he's like talking to when he first introduced himself to Rhino through like putting his hand through the window.
I think the train scene is better, but I think like the overall like just average quality of action overall is better in this one than Spider-Man 2. Like I think there's not really one scene that's quite as standout as Spider-Man 2, like in terms of action, but the overall just like overlaying quality is higher, in my opinion.
Oh, okay, I can see that. Yeah.
But I love the Spider-Man jokes. My favorite is when he gets hit by Electro's like electric explosion or whatever at the end. He's like, "Oh man, you know, shake it off. It's just your bones and your muscles and your organs." And that.
Yeah. I like the part where he knocks on the window and goes like, "Mr. Criminal, hold down the window," and then he's like, "You can call me Spider-Man, you can call me Webhead, just don't call me late for dinner." Get it? That totally like represents his kind of sense of humor to me.
It seems like that when I watch it.
I love the line. I love the moment where Electro says, "I'll be like a god to them," and Spider-Man says, "A god named Sparkles?"
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite line in any Spider-Man film thus far. I laughed way too hard at that. I laughed probably harder than I should have at that, but that was really funny to me.
Yeah, I laughed at that, and like no one else like in my section of the theater did, and I felt like an idiot. And everyone's like, "I don't get why he said that." I'm like, it was in reference to what he referred to him as the first time, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's funny." I'm like, yeah, if you were paying attention.
You don't even have to pay attention. You just have to look at Electro.
The best part was during the quip, and I think I said this on the ASM movie one. When we did the original episode, that there was like this couple that were like making out like the whole time in front of us. Like they looked like they were college kids, and they were like making out the whole time we were watching it. Well, they stopped during the opening, jokes and stuff, and they go, "Why is he making jokes? He's a superhero." Like the girl literally said, Why is he making so many jokes? Ain't he a superhero?
James, did you smack them on the back of the head for me?
No! And, oh god, it was like terrible. Here's my pros and cons. See Amazing Spider-Man 2 episode originally 7 months ago, and for my cons, same thing, because it's pretty much, my opinions haven't really changed. Like, it has grown on me, the movie, more, the stuff I didn't like, and, like, some of the stuff I did like, now rewatching it a few times. So it's like this weird kind of balance going on, where it's still the same kind of pros and cons are going on here. It's just as time goes by, and it gets farther away from the movie, the stuff that bothered me really bad is more like, yeah. It's still a con, but it's like, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But I feel like they hit every character, most of the characters at least, like Riddle, like the Riddler, Electro, I agree with was stupid and dumb, but everything else, from the way how they had Harry, how they had Norman in that one scene, how they had Rhino in those two scenes, how they had Gwen, how they had Peter, how they had Aunt May, how they had Jonah in just that email.
Yes.
Everything was the comic brought to life. They got every single one of those people right. That hairline, when he first sees Harry, and he asks, "Do you still have people who do your hair for you?" I mean, that's obviously like a little nod of the comic books to the Osborn hair. Like that, I know it's a different haircut, but when I look at Harry in that movie, he's this rich, weaselly guy who, if he didn't have money, would have been just as bully as Peter. He has a crappy haircut. He looks like this sniveling, weaselly little guy, and scrawny. And when you look at those original Ditko and early Ramitas, that's Harry. A scrawny, Weasley-looking guy with a bad haircut. All he needed was the bow tie.
I think I agree. The big pros are definitely the characterizations. Performances by all the actors. All the actors in general did an excellent job. They performed on every level. Jamie Foxx even did a great job with what he was given. I felt like the writing is what really screwed him over when it came to Max Dillon, but I'll talk about that later when we get to our cons. Biggest pro though is definitely the relationship between Peter and Gwen. Like, it
absolutely fantastic.
It's just it feels so natural, and it feels like it should. It is still the epitome of great comic book movie relationships to me. It's the best one, bar none, for me. So
I like how they tied a lot of comic book elements to it. Like you had Gwen, in the comic book, she went off for Europe for those few issues before she died to give birth to the Osborn babies. But that was a retcon later. But she went to Europe, and they kind of tied it in here where they're breaking up and they're broken up, and she wants to go again study in England, in Europe. So there's those kind of odds. And then you got the whole kind of, well, in the comics, they went back and forth whether it was the Brooklyn Bridge or the George Washington Bridge that she fell off of. So they homage that in this movie twice by them making out and having that really romantic scene on top of the bridge is the George Washington Bridge. And then the bridge she sees with the spray paint, I love you, is the Brooklyn Bridge. Like they put so much faith and effort into making this felt like it was the Amazing Spider-Man comic book brought to life on the big screen.
What my favorite part of the Peter-Gwen relationship is? To me, it really never feels forced, because to me, throughout both of these movies, even when they're not together, they just act so natural around each other because they both know how this thing ends, or at least how it's supposed to end. They know they are just riding the train and letting it progress naturally because they know that they are supposed to be together and that they will find a way to be together. Neither one of them doubts that, well, until, things happen. But they know how it's supposed to end. And so that was the big thing that really sold it for me, was because these two are so comfortable around each other because they both know how it's supposed to end, and they know that they are supposed to be together. They're not forcing it. They're just letting things happen.
Speaking of how things are supposed to end versus how they aren't supposed to end, another great pro for me is the scene where Peter is crying over Gwen's body. That is one of the best performances I have seen. I can't lie, I was crying. I was literally sitting there with my brother there, and I was crying because of just how emotional that entire thing was, from the way that she felt slowly and everything was in slow motion up until the point where he's like crying over her body. It's such a great scene. Like, if nothing else, it is like one of the best scenes I've seen in any movie, period. Not to mention comic book movies. So
my mom was asleep when that happened, so I was like, I turned over to her and she was like out, and I was like, oh, come on. But yeah, I agree with Thomas. That was one of the best scenes in comic book history, comic book movie history. I think they captured. There's a thing about it that I want to get to in cons, but since we're sticking to pros, I guess I'll give mine. Character stuff is great, and I like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker a lot more in this movie than I did in the first. Most of my problems are gone that I had in the first movie. I think he nails it. He's very Romita Peter Parker to me in this movie, and I think this movie actually does a good job of capturing the John Romita kind of tone. I think the tone shift is a little bit jarring. It's so like a transition from like the gritty ultimate kind of feel of the first to like this very Silver Age tone of the second is a little bit jarring. But I prefer a Silver Age tone to my comic book movies, so I didn't mind too much. I dug the characters. I thought Harry Osborn was well acted. I thought there's a lot of really cool fan service. I really like Spider-Man and his portrayal. I like that, unlike Man of Steel, there's a lot of emphasis put on Spider-Man helping other people during the action scenes. Like, Spider-Man's primary objective isn't being the bad guy, it's making sure the bystanders don't get killed, and that was very true to the character, so I love that stuff. I thought, even though he was only in like 2 minutes, I thought the Green Goblin was terrifying, and just really, I think that was
the most intense fight in the entire movie is when he's like holding, trying to like keep Gwen from falling down while he's fighting Green Goblin. That is super intense.
And while he's while he's trying to stop the cogs from cutting the web.
Yep.
That could not have been comfortable, having your leg up here, your arm's right here, the other arm back here, and your other leg being alive by a cog. That could not have been comfortable.
Yeah,
No.
I think that whole scene was great, and I think I really like I know James disagrees with me on this, but I really like the Green Goblin's like aesthetic. I like how he mutates where he looks disfigured and kind of goblin-y.
I actually agree with you on that. I actually really like how Green Goblin looks.
I like the armor and everything. I like the way the glider is really high tech and everything. And I just dig the Goblin. And I thought the score that Hans Zimmer did when he shows up was really chilling. So everything, even though he was only in like 2 minutes, I think the Green Goblin was actually the highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah, I think Green Goblin aesthetically, a lot of people didn't like it because it's not like the comic version, but I'm actually one of those people that doesn't think that the actual straight from the comics version is going to work.
No, I don't think it would. I think it's hard to do.
I don't know, because they had photos or videos that leaked of Raimi from the Raimi trilogy for Spider-Man 1, where they did like a test of a Green Goblin mask that was faithful to the comics, and it looked real, and it looked really scary, more than what we got with the whole
thing. And I think it looked good in the actual test footage, but at the same time, if I think about it doing the same thing as like actually going through the actions in the movie, I feel like it would have looked actually quite silly in the actual thing, and particularly in a movie like in The Amazing Spider-Man, where Green Goblin is meant to be a really chilling character. It doesn't look like a terrifying mask. Whereas when you have Harry, who doesn't have a mask, I think it allows him to like show his emotions better, and it allows you to see just how really terrifying this guy is, because he has just like lost everything. He's lost his mind. He's lost like his appearance. He's lost everything who he has been before, and so it makes it incredibly terrifying to watch him.
I've seen the deleted scene where he like looks at himself in the mirror and he sees how disfigured he looks, like, and he's like,
yes.
I mean,
another scene that should not have been cut.
Yeah.
and I really want to give big props to Dane DeHaan's performance in this film. That guy, there was never a moment where I did not know exactly how that guy was feeling and how he was thinking throughout that entire film, and that is all on Dane DeHaan's performance. He did a fantastic job in this film.
Oh, really, John? I didn't know that for like 2 or 3 weeks you've been quoting every goddamn line that guy had in the movie. But, yeah, if I can get my opinions out there really quickly, yes, I do not like the Green Goblin look in the movie. I would love to see a Spider-Man movie do a faithful version of the Green Goblin suit. You know, if it looks stupid or not, be damned, because I think it could be pulled off if it's done right in the right tone. But I just didn't really like it. They could have done anything, and I would have found something like, but like I like the Raimi trilogy Green Goblin. I'm the only person who likes it, you know, probably on this earth. But this one, but the one thing I really like is that, you know, he had no mask. His skin had this greenish tint. His eyes were yellow. His teeth were yellow. He had the pointy little headsets, and his hair was like a spiked up Super Saiyan purple. So they had that kind of, you know, look that the Green Goblin mask, but it's his face. But if you look at it, you will think it's the Green Goblin's mask. I like those kind of stuff. Yeah, it looks close enough. It looks like he's wearing the mask, even though he's not. About Gwen Death, because I wanted to get to that before you guys jumped on a new topic. I said this before in the other podcast. One of my favorite issues is The Night Gwen Stacy Died. I love that issue. I read it 1,000 times. And when you read that panel, it's emotional. It's you know, when you see him, you know, you see her fall, him catch her with the web, and then him cry her body. You see the snap neck on the panel, depending on if it's a reprint or not, or whatever they got the reprint from. You read that, and it's a comic book, and you're in your head, you're hearing these voices, you know, of the characters. You know, when you're reading it, you're reading the story, and it is emotional. But when you actually see this living, breathing, real people portraying it on a big screen in 3D, it like took my breath away. Like literally, everybody in the movie theater, even me, who saw it coming, like it was a different reaction because when you got to the scene where he's on the gears and he's trying desperately to hold on to her and not have the gears go again, snap and make her fall and possibly tear him and Harry also to shreds. Everybody in the movie theater who doesn't know the comic book is getting really tense. So it's like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen here? And for me as a comic book fan, I know what's gonna happen, and I'm dreading it. This is somebody who knows Gwen Stacy is destined to die. I told my ex-girlfriend who hated the movie just because of the death that get over it because of the comic book she dies. Because she was living in Australia and they got the movie like a month earlier than us. So I was able to tell her because she spoiled it to me, and I'm like, shut up, for one, and two, that's the comic books, she dies. But when you're seeing it on the big screen, it's like I'm dreading it, but I know what the end game is. I know what's going to happen. And then when you see her fall and he shoots the web, and then he catches her, and then she whiplash, hits her head, whatever happens. I'm still not sure if it's a whiplash or if she hits her head off of it. Whatever knocks her out and kills her, when you just see her stop and she goes limp, everybody in the movie theater, including me, just went, and then you can hear a pin drop. He comes down, and then you have the kind of, allusions to the comic book of, the whole, wake up, kid, I saved you, but updated Monterey where he's telling her to breathe, and he's losing it, and then the blood starts to drip out of her mouth and her
nose.
Her nose, I mean, eyes even, or me, I just imagine that, but I think it even like a little bit of like redness just coming in her eyes even. And when he's holding on that body and he's in denial, and I kid you not, you could not hear a pin drop. The movie theater was silent, and every girl, from that girl who was making out with her boyfriend during the beginning of the movie, to my sister, to every other girl when the lights came back on and they walked out. Didn't matter if they were a 5-year-old going as a family movie night, teenager on a date night, or even a married couple that grew up liking Spider-Man. It didn't matter what age. Every woman was like the Niagara Falls when they walked out with their eyes because of that scene. That scene was intense. It was powerful. Bittersweet, beautiful. I think you can say it because it hit everything so perfectly and it was beautifully, made. But it's a death, so it's bittersweet about that. That was more than a home run. That was a grand slam in the World Series to win it. That scene. And then they fucked it up with, quickly pushing it underneath the rug with the 6-month later time skip. But before you get to that, with the actual death scene, they did it perfectly, 100% A+ for that.
Yeah.
Talking about the death scene when she's falling, the way the web like kind of creates a hand out of it, and just like the feeling of desperation you get out of
Ed Jones hated
did the hand thing. A lot of people call that cheesy, but I felt like it really came across as how truly desperate he was in that moment to reach him in time.
And I thought it was
do it.
The scene hit me even harder than the comic because like I said in the comic, Gwen was a bipolar psycho, like a terrible, really just like not a nice. I don't mean to insult people who have bipolar, because I mean, just she was a poorly written character all around. She
was stereotypical Silver Age girlfriend, like that whole bipolarness. When you go back and read any superhero girlfriend at the time, Lois Lane, Vicky Vale and Batman, Pepper Potts, all of them were that. They were the "why are you missing our date?" kind of bitch, and the hero has to come up with an excuse for what else, revealing the secret identity to her. And she gets mad at him, but she forgives him in the end because they need to do it again for the next month.
And she was an upgrade from Betty Brant, but being an upgrade from Betty Brant is like being an upgrade from Michael Bay. Like, it's just not really a complimentary character. So, but with this version, I actually cared about Gwen, and when she died, I was, legitimately heartbroken. So I thought that was the Green Goblin fight and all of that stuff was the highlight of the movie for me.
And then I disagree about the 6 months. Yep.
Yeah, 6 months later, and then.
I disagree about the 6 month skip being a problem. I mean, like, if it had just done like a blank screen that 6 months later, I felt like that would have been really, really like cheating the audience out of something. But the fact that they skipped seasons and showed Peter standing over her grave for that time, it showed that he was.
I have no problem with that.
I mean, it was. Yeah, I felt like it like it wasn't really skipping over anything too much for me. I felt like it got its point across that he was mourning. I felt like the biggest problem is that it didn't give us, the audience, time to kind of grieve over it because it went to the part where Peter had to kind of get over it at the end of the movie.
Or whatever.
Well,
Yeah, I felt
okay with that.
like what they could have done is that the last shot of the movie could have been him standing with the New York skyline behind him, looking down on her grave, and that could have been it. And I would have been just so thrilled with the movie, ending it on like that sad note, and then having the first scene of the next movie being him kind of going for Rhino, and then kind of moving towards Mary Jane throughout the movie.
Well, just because we've been talking about pros for a while, I'm going to jump into some of my cons. And my first con.
Let me say this point then what he's saying real quickly. I think, and this is kind of a con, so we're jumping into the con section. I agree with you, but I think they could have kept the Rhino fight. They could have kept that whole scene exactly the same way it was if they would have done one thing. Mute all of Peter's dialogue.
No,
Exactly.
I actually love the Rhino fight. I love the Rhino fight. I think that's my favorite part of the whole movie is the Rhino fight, and that scene with the little kid actually makes me cry more than Gwen's death. Like I have no problem with
That's what I mean.
everything.
You have him listening to Gwen's little web video of her speech, and that kind of motivates him. And then seeing that the kid's gonna get killed by the Rhino because he's standing up to him. You can even keep the okay kid moment where he says that line. But when he's quipping and making jokes and throwing, the megaphone up in the air, and he's making all these jokes about Rhino, it's
That
like
should
the
not have been in
audience
there.
is grieving over the death because we haven't got the 6 months in real time. We're still grieving. If they would have kept it been silent and he's a more serious Spider-Man, in contrast to how he was in that first scene with the Rhino, it would have been really cool. Like, oh, here in the first scene when they're together, he's quipping and being Spider-Man and making all the jokes, and here he's dead serious because he's still in mourning for his girlfriend. And he's more mature now because, the lesson he learned of her death. But
That
it's
is-
like,
I feel like that would have really gone
Man,
across
let's
as
be
the
fine.
fact that
It's a
Spider-Man
family
has
movie.
changed in his attitude.
Well, okay,
That is
now
exactly.
You needed to show that he had changed a little bit because of Gwen's death, and that
instead of going
Spider-Man
back to the same way
was
it
going
was,
to be more responsible in the future and making sure people didn't get hurt in those situations. And I felt like kind of going back to that quip so fast was kind of a mistake, especially since it's his first time out being Spider-Man after Gwen's death. I felt like if they had just cut the quips out, I don't think it needs to be as serious as you're going to die now or whatever, but like just being like
that would have been awful
as
if he said
the
that. I
Rhino
would have
was
hated
like, you
to see
fight me, you want to fight me now? And he just wouldn't say anything. I would have been perfectly happy with
look
that
at the
scene
comics.
altogether.
Look at the comics. After Gwen dies in the comics, there's that 4, 5, maybe even 6 month stretch in the comic where he's not quipping. He's not joking. Harry's getting really distant because his father's dead and he knows the secret and he knows it's Peter. It's Spider-Man. He wants to kill him. Mary Jane is kind of more mature now after that whole, that scene with her and Peter, at the ending of the Norman death issue. Can't remember the number off the top of my head. 222,
Number
right?
122.
Guys? Yeah. You got, Mary Jane more mature now because she stayed with Peter. You got Flash coming back from the war, and he's really, having that post-Vietnam kind of thing going on with him. Plus, Gwen's dead now, so it adds to it. And Peter, you just look at how many panels in those 4, 5, 6 month stretch in the comics where it was him in the suit screaming, "No, don't die like Gwen," as somebody's being hurt by a villain,
like the
Here's the thing.
Back all the way up until the Clone Saga, the first Clone Saga in the 70s, really.
Yeah.
And here
Now,
in the movie,
Here's the thing happening.
I'm flipping, I'm funny, family film. It's like it would be like if 222 ended with the scene of Peter and Mary Jane in that room, and then the next panel is time to have fun, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It would completely ruin the death and everything.
Here's the thing with the comics, though. Here's the thing with the comics. I always felt like in the comics, after basically in the time period that you were talking about, James, with 122 to basically 140, whatever, when the Clone Saga started, I always felt like Peter Parker, if someone said a word out of line to him, or if someone literally just did anything, he was going to rip their head off their shoulders, because that was how on edge that guy was. I mean, because, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, with all that's happened to him at that point, that guy was obviously on edge, and he was just going to break at any second. I mean, I don't know if it would have been violently or whatever, but that guy was on edge perfectly, and that's really how he should have been here. I really did not like that they went back to quipping so quickly, because when they went back to quipping so quickly, that, yes, it makes more sense in the context of in-universe in that movie, but what you said was absolutely correct. The audience, for us as the audience, Gwen's been dead for 10 minutes. For him, Gwen's been dead for 6 months. It may work in universe, but it doesn't work for the audience, and that's the big problem with it.
Well, see, the thing is, in the comic, the way I remember it, I think Peter, I don't remember what issue, but I think by the time Harry first became the Green Goblin, which was, I think, about a year after, in real time, about a year after the death of Gwen Stacy, I think he was more or less
135, so it was a little bit over a year.
So I think he was well on his way to being more recovered when Harry first became the Goblin, at least the way I remember it. But I think it was a much longer healing process than it was in the movie. But all that stuff being said, I love the line where he says, on the behalf of real rhinos everywhere, please put your paws in the air or whatever. That made me laugh in the theater. That was a great line. Even though the context doesn't work, I think the line is a good Spider-Man joke. So
it is a great Spider-Man joke. I just feel like that should have been at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 3, almost a whole nother movie away, and he's finally back to joking around the way he was because he's finally healed a lot more. He's gotten to the point where he's okay with it. I felt like that was something that should have taken place a whole nother movie away, a whole nother 2.5-hour time span for the audience, not 10 minutes.
Another big problem I have with the go ahead, James.
Oh, I'm about to say, I made a joke about, because that could be he's finally getting over it because he's ending up with Mary Jane and he's falling in love with her, so he's finally, moving on from Gwen. And to segue into that, I think another con with me is, okay, they cut out Woodley from the movie because of diversion or whatever version it was, whether it be she was going to do diversion, so they had to cut her out because she wasn't going to be able to do sequels, or just time reasonings, or whatever was the reason why they cut her out. I felt like there should have still been some little bit of Mary Jane in that movie.
Yeah, I agree.
If you spend all this time
getting
Mary Jane in here in some form, and in the movie they completely ignore it. They could have done a one-off line when Peter's going for that whole moping, breaking up with Gwen thing in the beginning of the movie, where Aunt May is constantly saying, "Hey, you should go out with the next door neighbor Watson girl," and Peter blows her off to do an homage to the comics how he used to blow off Aunt May. Just little one-off jokes like that, because the fans would have got it. Hey, maybe we should ask out the next door neighbor Watson girl, or something like that. Just put a one-off line like that in there.
Even people who had watched the original trilogy would have gone, "That's Mary Jane." So I think that would have worked. But at the same time, I understand why they kept Mary Jane out. I feel like the movie, particularly since it was so focused on Peter and Gwen's relationship, it would have contradicted the fact that he was so in love with Gwen Stacy if he was having some sort of interaction with Mary Jane in any sort of context, because the audience already knows that Mary Jane and Peter have a relationship, that it would kind of contradict the fact that he's so in love with her, and people would be like, so when's he going to get together with Mary Jane? We're confused.
Well, I wouldn't really see it as that, because, like I said, just do it as one-off lines, it's a comic book nod to the comics.
I feel like that might have worked, but with the context that they had her in originally, where they had scenes with her in it, I feel like that would have...
That the fans could have been pushing, "We want Mary Jane," or "We want Gwen."
Yeah.
Well, another thing,
already, we want Mary Jane now.
Yeah.
The big thing that bugs me about the Gwen death is actually that there's no fight with the Goblin after. I feel like that was strange.
There originally was, but they couldn't get a PG-13 rating for it, so they had to cut it.
And it's not on the deleted scenes either, which is annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Here is the thing, though. Here is the thing. This is why I was really glad that we didn't get a Goblin fight after that, because here's the thing with that. You just have that really, really dark, emotional scene where Gwen is, where he's holding her in his arms, and there is no way for the audience to recover from that. If you go from, I really don't think it would work if you go from that really heartbreaking, emotional scene like that to straight up just this, heart-pounding thriller of him just ripping the goblin's head off. I really don't think
that's
I really
the thing.
don't think that works.
He would have killed her.
I actually think that actually would work, because a lot of the audience would probably feel angry as well towards like the goblin kind of killing it, and that you would understand the revenge driven. However, I do agree that it would feel weird and out of context, because if you look at the scenes in the way that they work, what it does is, so she dies and he's holding her and it's a sad moment, and then it goes back to just this like visceral, like violent revenge kind of driven thing, and then it'll have to go right back down again to the scene of her funeral where it's sad again. Whereas if you overlap the sad scenes together, then it flows better.
Exactly. It would have been really awkward.
I think the reason why you don't do it, because in a movie, not so much a comic book where you can get away with it, that nobody dies or whatever, but in a sense of a movie, if this was real life and you're playing this off as a real life modern Spider-Man, and he goes to fight Harry after this, he would have killed him.
I definitely think he would.
Maybe in the first one, but this is not like a realistic movie at all. Like this movie completely threw the gritty tone of the first one out the window. Like I can buy, him not killing Harry or pulling back, and I think
I think that in the film what they had is I remember hearing that in the beginning, Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben had a scene where Peter begins beating Goblin up,
and then Uncle Ben's like, "Don't do it."
He's about to kill him, and then Uncle Ben shows up and tells him, "No. With great power comes great responsibility." And then you would have actually heard the line come from Uncle Ben in that moment, and then Peter would have been like, "Okay, I better lay off of him." So Green Goblin would have lived after that point.
And then Harry, oh yeah, by the way, when we were 8, I am the one who stole your tricycle, and then Peter beats him to death for that.
You broke my toy.
Yeah, you're right, Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. Harry, I'm sending you to jail for the murdering of my girlfriend. I also, that super
I also used
bike you used to have when we were 8. Yeah.
Clean my toilet one time.
I kind of ran it. I kind of told my dad I wanted that bike, so my dad stole it from you, destroyed it, and bought me a better bike.
You son of a! He's like, son of a bitch!
No, I used your toothbrush one time to clean my toilet. What?
And then that's how the movie ends. It depends with it. I cleaned my toilet with your toothbrush, Peter. You son of a! And then you see the hand come in, and then Spider-Man, and then the credits.
Okay.
I think part of the effectiveness of the death in the original comics, though, was that the Green Goblin was like kind of around to like really like rub it in and make it even worse by going like I killed your girlfriend, what you gonna do about it? And I think it would have been really. I wanted to see Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin taunt Peter about the fact that he killed Gwen.
And the comic book, you romantic idiot, she was dead before she hit the ground kind of thing.
Yeah, like that. But if you said that, that would be stupid because that science doesn't make anyway. I think I would have liked to seen that, and I think the fight would have given it a little bit more closure. I feel like it's weird that the ending is so rushed because we don't. One thing, how does no one know that he's Spider-Man anymore? Because it's like, okay, Peter Parker takes pictures of Spider-Man, and his best friend fought Spider-Man and killed his girlfriend. So how is Peter and then his mentor became a lizard monster that tried to kill everybody. So how is no one made the connection?
So connected guy by radioactive spider. It's just this guy's got really shitty luck. Like that's what it comes down to. If I was in that.
And Spider-Man had a battle with the supervillain inside Peter Parker's high school. It's like not really that hard to connect the dots and figure out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
At the same time,
suspension of disbelief. Suspension of disbelief.
At the same time, those are two Osborn employees, and Gwen also goes to that school. So maybe
it's more connected to Oscorp than Peter himself. That's probably the connection that police are going to be drawing from that.
I mean, I was more joking than anything. I wasn't actually being, and also I think we don't really explore all we explore is Peter's guilt, his sadness over Gwen, but we don't really explore how he feels about the fact that his best friend tried to kill him. We don't really explore any of that sadness. What do you?
To be honest, To be honest, I don't think there was time for that though.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like
It was
that's the problem.
it was actually needed though because it's all about. Oh, I'm sad because of Gwen. You didn't really.
It really was all about Gwen at that point, and the upcoming films, or in the supposed Amazing Spider-Man 3 film, if that's even still happening. So
I don't think it is.
I think we touched just about everything. Should we just segue to what we think about what might happen with the future?
Okay, no, I have
now?
one more point to make, and I'm going to make it quick.
And then we can do grades. Right?
Yeah. Well, I want to make one thing really quick. Harry's disease is like plot device disease because he doesn't act on anything until he finds out about it, and then suddenly it's like 3 days later he has, like evil goblin spores or whatever on his skin, and he's all like, "Oh my God, I'm going to die next week," even though my dad had the same disease and lasted until he was like 60.
Yes, and that is such a huge problem for me. Is like he keeps talking about like the fact that he has like no more time left or whatever, and you're like,
"You have 50 years."
Your dad made it until he was like 60-something years old.
I got a sense that he was already running Oscorp at the time, Norman, when he was Harry's age. And that he was using experimental drug after experimental drug, which
I feel like the movie should have done something with that.
Yeah, they should have actually mentioned
the reason that Norman was able to live for so long. Then they should have explained it. They should have said, "Oh well, Norman was using all these experimental things on him to save his life and keep him alive for that long, and Harry doesn't have the resources, or those simply don't work on him because he developed immunity to those." Then I could understand that, but the movie never explained that.
And then another thing I think they could have done too with that scene that could explain it really cool is if Norman on the deathbed would have had Harry goes, "Well, then I got 50 years to fix your mistakes before I die," and he'd be cool about it. And he goes, "No, here's the thing, Harry. It's genetic, but each time it gets passed down, the disease gets stronger and stronger. Hence him going, you probably only have 50 days or something like that," and laugh maniacally and die.
Or I would feel like this would probably be better. He'd be like, "See, the disease developed immunities. We tried to try to use the same immunities on you, and all it did was accelerate the disease."
See, that I would have accepted. But
that'd be freaking creepy.
One more con that I'm going to throw out there, and yes, we've already discussed this.
Parents' storyline.
No, not really. The parents' storyline in general. I mean, in general, still sucked. But I really, really hate the fact that no one else but Peter Parker could have become Spider-Man. That bugged me.
Yeah, fair point.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't really mind it too much. The only problem that I have is that, again, if they want to make a Spider-Man universe out of this, now all you have is now you have Peter Parker being the only one who's able to be Spider-Man, so you can't have Miles Morales, you can't have Miguel O'Hara, you can't have any of those other Spider-Man characters.
Or Silk, since we don't want a movie about
Silk.
I
was just thinking that.
I think that brings up one of my biggest cons about this franchise, about this new reboot franchise. Avi Arad, because that was all him, because in every interview when the reboot first happened and talks about spin-off movies, everybody pointed out Spider-Woman, everybody pointing out Miles Morales, everybody pointing out Ben Reilly and the Clones, everybody pointing out, Spider-Man 2099, Spider-Girl, in a different universe. They point out all these cool ideas for spin-offs, and he goes, "No, it has to be Peter Parker. It's only Peter Parker. Peter Parker or nothing."
I know. I actually don't really want to see any other Spider-Man character. If they're doing a spin-off, but I want the main Spider-Man movie franchise to always be about Peter Parker.
I kind of don't want to either. I'm kind of okay without it. I feel like having a Scarlet Spider spin-off movie would be kind of cool, like maybe if Miles Morales was the Scarlet Spider or something like that. And I feel like if you execute it well, like with any other concept, it can work and it would work. I just think they're really, for film development and a company that wants to make a universe out of it, like Marvel's universe, they're cutting themselves off at every corner that they possibly can to make a grander universe.
But that's the point. His whole thing is he believes it should only be Peter Parker. But people were trying to say, but there's other Spider characters who aren't necessarily Spider-Man. You got Scarlet Spiders, you got Kane, you got Venom, you got Spider-Woman.
To be fair, though,
you got these other Spider-related characters that you can use. And he was like, nope, Peter Parker only. Peter Parker or a bus.
Yeah,
But yeah,
And
I
then
feel
you
like
also
I'm
got
kinda cutting themselves off at the knees, but yeah.
yeah, and then you
we want
got
to make a
his whole
franchise. We're going to make it as hard for ourselves as possible.
and then you got his one really dumb line that he had right when press was starting up for the first reboot, and people were asking all these questions about why did you reboot, and he said the line,
It's
"Nope,
not a
this
reboot.
isn't. It's not
It's
a
a
reboot.
prequel."
It's the same world. This is an untold tale in between 1 and 2." We just saw the trailer. You're redoing the freaking Spider-Bite origin. This ain't Untold Tale. This ain't between 1 and 2.
Have you seen
What are
the
you talking about?
Have you seen the one where Bertoni, like, just for fun, like, figured out how it would work that they could be in the same continuity?
How was that?
It was really funny. He's like, so Uncle Ben gets shot, but it doesn't actually kill him. He just goes to the hospital and then he dies. He gets shot again and dies. And then Gwen like becomes a model and gets so drugged up that she forgets who Peter Parker is by the time of the Spider-Man 3. And Dr. Connors gets amnesia and forgets everything. And Peter Parker, and it was like really funny.
What?
Yeah. He was joking. He wasn't actually being serious.
Yeah. It does sound like a joke. I'm just saying that's wow.
It was
The
hilarious.
kind of stuff that you have to do to make it work is just not worth the trouble. It's a
All right,
reboot.
let's go around for grades on this. I'm exhausted after that. Let's go around for grades. Jan, give me the grade.
A-. I like it a little bit more than the first.
All right, Thomas, give me a grade.
I see. I don't like it as much as the first one. I felt like Electro was much weaker than the Lizard. Rhino worked out really well, and I felt like there were some rushed plot lines that probably didn't need to be there. So I'm gonna give it a solid B.
James, give me a grade.
I think I said originally when we did the podcast it was like an A+, but almost a year later I can say it's now a B-.
All right, my grade. I'm vacillating between two letter grades. It's either a B+ or an A-. I didn't mind Electro. I thought Electro was fine for what he was. I loved the Rhino. I thought the Rhino was used to perfection. Harry, very awesome characterization, very solid acting, and I thought the Goblin suit was awesome. Really just, even though I didn't like the parents' plot, I thought the rest of the movie was fine. So B+, A- out of me. So anywhere, if there's like a imaginary letter between that, that's what it would be. B anywhere between B+ and an A-.
I think my A- is, it's not a quality grade. It's just kind of an enjoyment grade. Like I think quality grade is probably B-, but I think enjoyment, it's a very enjoyable movie for me, so I give it an A-, like just how much I like watching it.
All right, and man, this show's been going on for 3 hours, and we've not even touched the outlook of this. I'm gonna ask this on the fly right now. Do we want to stop it here and do the outlook another time?
No.
Or do we just want to keep going?
Keep going.
All right, it's
whatever you want, John. This is your baby. You brought it back. Whatever you want to do. If you want to do a part 2 next week, I think we're all okay with that, probably, or 1 month from now, or whatever. But if you want to keep going, come on.
I really think we should do a part 2 because I don't think anyone's gonna listen even this far.
Yeah. Well, the problem is doing an outlook right now is that I feel like we won't touch on everything we want to since we're gonna kind of try to rush through it in like half an hour. Because let's face it, John's time it's like 11:30, so we'll probably try to rush through it in about half an hour. So
yeah,
let's just cap the show off right here.
Yeah, I think for the future we can honestly just say for me right now, I hope Marvel gets the rights in some way, but I don't want to go into details because if we are, I think we're all going to be here for another 3 hours.
Yeah. We'll talk about it later. Let's just let's cap the show off here. So final thoughts on the ASM film franchise so far, James.
Really good try. In some aspects, it's better than the Raimi's movies, but in other aspects, Raimi movies kick their butt. And it's like somebody said this before, and I agree with it right now. It took Mark Webb and their people 2 movies to ruin it with the bad stuff. I'm going to say it right now because it's not a bad movie. but to get to the same burnout that Raimi did with Spider-Man 3. It took him one movie before that. Like, it really is.
Right.
It's like a nice try. It's like, it's good. There's parts I like Gwen, like I said. Peter, Spider-Man, not really Peter, but Spider-Man. Harry, there's stuff I like, but there's also other stuff where it's like they could have done better.
All right, Thomas, final thoughts?
For me, I really like this franchise as a whole. I mean, there are parts where it doesn't work out the way it should, but I still think it's overall better than Raimi's original try. I feel like it's closer to what I'm hoping for. I think the biggest part is that where Raimi succeeds is that this franchise is trying so hard to differentiate itself from Raimi that the parts where Raimi succeeded are the parts where this franchise is going to fail because they're trying to be so different. And that's going to be a detriment. So if this franchise does continue, and obviously that's becoming a bigger if as time goes on, it needs to get away from this mentality that we need to be completely different from Raimi's franchise.
All right, Jan, final thoughts on the franchise?
I agree with James. I think these are good tries. I think they're both really enjoyable if you kind of turn your brain off. But I feel like what we need someone to come and take what Raimi did right and what Webb did right and throw it together, and you'd have the perfect Spider-Man franchise. So.
All right, my final thoughts are I really enjoy the two movies they've put out so far. Have been solid pieces of film. I think they've been solid films, and I disagree with a lot of the with a lot of the criticisms that I hear about it. But I mean, it's your own opinion. I can't tell you that you're wrong. I can't tell you that you're wrong. I don't have any right to do that. I don't have any business doing that. But I mean, it's all a matter of opinion with this stuff. I mean, so I personally enjoy it, but I mean, c'est la vie. So yeah, I guess this has been a nice little part one to this whole thing. I was probably very naive in thinking that we could get through this all in one show. I was probably very
That's the
naive.
problem with
That's
the first show in 7 months.
Oh my gosh!
You forgot what we were like, guys. That's the problem.
I honestly, I really, I was so naive in thinking that we could get through this all. It took us like 2 hours to get through the. I think we literally spent an hour and a half.
That's what Mark Webb said. I thought we seriously could have got this done with quickly. I didn't know it was going to take 2 hours. That's what Mark Webb said.
Yeah, I really think that I think we spent an hour and a half on each film individually, but yeah, I think we'll be back for a part 2 sometime in the near future. So I guess as of right now, this is Spider Nerd Podcast, whatever we're calling ourselves right now. Signing off.
Yeah.
Later.
And of course, it wouldn't be. Yeah. So it's nice seeing you guys again.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and of course, one last thing, since this is on the AGR feed, it wouldn't be the last thing if I didn't mention AGR. Watch it if we're getting new viewers because of this. Watch AGR, the main show on this account. It's awesome. It has me and other awesome people. Watch it. Awesome. Awesome. Watch it. Watch it. And yes, Thomas, midgets are allowed.
No!